Chapter 1177. I'm willing to surrender too. Me too. In the end, even the disciples and experts of Cold Blood Hall began to surrender. Some of the diehards killed those who did not surrender. Before long, the battle stopped. Almost all the experts of Cold Blood Hall had surrendered. A few supreme martial artists broke through the siege and escaped. The rest of the supreme martial artists had surrendered. Even an emperor had been defeated and fled. If they continued to stubbornly resist, they would be courting death. The battle had ended. Later, Lu Ming ordered the experts to work with Floating Mountain to engrave a formation in the consciousness seas of those who surrendered. Brother Lu, we meet again. Jing Kongling gracefully walked over. She was surrounded by mist and looked ethereal like an immortal. Miss Kongling. Lu Ming cupped his fists in greeting. Jing Kongling's gaze landed on Xian Yinqing, and a hint of surprise flashed across his eyes. I believe this must be Miss Xian Yinqing. She is truly a peerless beauty that Brother Lu is willing to personally come to the 9 underworlds. Xian Yinqing rolled her eyes and took Lu Ming's arm. You're too kind. Then a voice came into Lu Ming's ears. You know quite a lot of beauties when I'm not around. I was wondering why you attacked Cold Blood Hall instead of Floating Mountain. It turns out that there's a beauty waiting for you to save her. Lu Ming smiled bitterly. Was this girl jealous? Lu Ming's mind raced as he tried to find an excuse. Hiss! At this moment, the space cracked and Mo Yi and Martial Emperor Xan walked out. Mo Yi, how's the Blood Emperor of Cold Blood Hall? Lu Ming asked hurriedly. His body was shattered and the spirit deity was severely injured. Unfortunately, he escaped with the injured spirit deity. Mo Yi explained with some regret. Lu Ming sighed inwardly. The Blood Emperor was indeed powerful and difficult to kill. Even with 2 emperors at the same level, he still managed to escape. However, even though he has escaped, he won't be able to cause any trouble in a short period of time. The spirit god was seriously injured and fled with all his might. He doesn't have much strength left. Mo Yi explained. Brother Mo Yi, thank you for your help this time, said Empress Yu Xian at that moment, bowing to Mo Yi. Yu Xian Martial Monarch was very beautiful. She looked like she was only in her 30s. She didn't look like an Emperor Realm expert who had been famous in the Central Continent for nearly 10,000 years. Haha, there's no need to thank me. I'm just following orders. If you want to thank someone, you should thank Commander Lu Ming. Mo Yi smiled and looked at Lu Ming. Yu Xian Martial Monarch looked at Lu Ming with a trace of surprise in her eyes. Mo Yi actually obeyed Lu Ming's orders? A ruler actually obeyed the orders of a young junior. This was truly rare in the world. Greetings, Senior Moon Heart. Lu Ming cupped his fists towards Yu Xian Martial Monarch. Commander Lu, you're too courteous. How about we go into the mountains for a chat? Said Yu Xian Martial Monarch. Lu Ming and the others nodded and followed Yu Xian Martial Monarch, Jing Kongling and the others into Floating Mountain. They sat down in a hall. Thank you for your help, Commander Lu. Otherwise, Floating Mountain would be in danger. Yu Xian Martial Monarch thanked Lu Ming again. You're too courteous. Miss Kongling and Chu Kuang are old friends of Floating Mountain. It's my duty to help them. Lu Ming thought for a while and said, The Central Continent is in chaos now. Many forces are fighting. If they're divided, they'll be weak. If they're united, they'll be strong. What do you think of Lu Ming's proposal to ally with Floating Mountain? Ally? Yu Xian Martial Monarch, Jing Kongling, and the other supreme masters of Floating Mountain were all stunned and pondered. Yu Xian Martial Monarch thought for a while and said, I wonder if Senior Xie is here. Senior Xie is in Cold Blood Hall's lair. I'm afraid Cold Blood Hall has fallen into his hands, said Lu Ming. 2 allies. Commander Lu, can you represent Senior Xie? Said Yu Xian Martial Monarch. Obviously, Lu Ming was not important enough in Yu Xian Martial Monarch's eyes. Don't worry. Commander Lu can make decisions on behalf of Demon Ancestor, said Mo Yi. This shocked Yu Xin Martial Monarch, Jing Kongling, and the others. They did not expect Lu Ming to have such great power in Xiaowan's forces. Yu Xin's eyes flickered slightly. All the rumors about Lu Ming that she had heard flashed through her mind. This guy has a bright future. In the end, Yu Xin's eyes lit up and said, Great. In that case, Floating Mountain will ally with Commander Lu. She was talking about Commander Lu, not Emperor Luan. Great. Lu Ming thanks Senior Yu. Lu Ming was overjoyed. To have one more ally was a great advantage for Lu Ming. Immediately, the two sides carried out a simple ceremony to formally form an alliance. After the alliance, Lu Ming said goodbye to Yu Xin and the others, because Xiaowan had sent news that the headquarters of Cold Blood Hall was completely under his control. Lu Ming led the army and went straight to Cold Blood Hall. Cold Blood Hall had been completely occupied. Those who had stayed behind had either surrendered or been killed. Experts from Myriad Demon Abyss were everywhere in Cold Blood Hall. Many of them were inscribing formations or repairing formations all over Cold Blood Hall. It did not take long for Lu Ming and the others to arrive at Cold Blood Hall. At Cold Blood Hall, more than a dozen experts gathered at the cross-domain transmission formation. Xiaowan, Lu Ming, Mo Yi, and the others were among them. Lu Ming, I didn't expect you to be the Zongzi of Eastern Wilderness Talisman Puppet Sect, but you don't have any spirit fire. How strange! Xiaowan laughed. Lu Ming smiled faintly but did not explain further. Senior, please help me adjust the coordinates of Talisman Puppet Sect, Lu Ming said. Immediately, a few supreme martial artists who were stronger in the way of inscription stepped forward and adjusted the coordinates of Talisman Puppet Sect on the huge cross-domain transmission altar. On the other hand, Lu Ming closed his eyes slightly. At this moment in Talisman Puppet Sect, a cave that had been closed for a long time suddenly opened. Lu Ming's second body stepped out of it. Lu Ming's second body moved and went to Bai Shijin's mansion. Not long after, Lu Ming's second body, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and two other supreme martial artists appeared at the cross-domain transmission formation of Talisman Puppet Sect. The chaotic Sky Emperor Xiaowan has reappeared. You even formed an alliance to destroy the Overlord Power Cold Blood Hall? Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others muttered to themselves. Ever since Lu Ming's second body briefly explained the situation in Central Continent, they still could not believe it and had not recovered from the shock. Senior, now everything is true. Let's adjust the coordinates of Cold Blood Hall and accept their transmission request. Lu Ming's second body said. Good, haha. In this way, Di can't trap us. Bai Shijin laughed. The others also smiled. If they could communicate with the overlord power of Central Continent, they would no longer have to be afraid of Di siege. Even if the Yin and Yang formation was broken, they would have a way out. Immediately, they began to adjust the coordinates. The transmission formation required the consent of both parties. It could not be transmitted just because one party wanted to. Chapter 1178. Not long after, the coordinates of the two sides were matched. The altar of the interterritory teleportation formation emitted a dazzling light, and a black vortex appeared above it. Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the rest stared at the vortex. Not long after, two figures emerged from the vortex. Lu Ming, Bai Shijin, and the rest were overjoyed. One of the two figures was Lu Ming and the other was Xia Nianqing. Lu Ming and Xia Nianqing stepped out of the vortex and appeared in front of Bai Shijin and the rest. Is this your second body? Xia Nianqing's big eyes were filled with curiosity as she looked at Lu Ming's second body. What? Do you want to give me a kiss? The second body suddenly smiled and said. Lu Ming's consciousness entered the second body and spoke. Xia Nianqing's little face instantly flushed red, and she glared at Lu Ming. The second body pointed at Lu Ming and took a step forward. It rapidly shrank and entered the heart of Lu Ming's brows, sitting cross-legged in Lu Ming's sea of consciousness. At this moment, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the rest were looking at Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing with astonishment. Lu Ming, your cultivation? What realm are you at? Bai Shijin asked. Actually, he had already seen through Lu Ming's cultivation, but he found it hard to believe. Peak of the 4th level of the spirit god realm. Senior, what's wrong? Lu Ming said. CSI, Bai Shijin, and the rest sucked in a breath of cold air. It had only been around 2 years. When Lu Ming set out from the eastern desolation to the central continent, his cultivation was only at the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm. But in 2 years, not only had Lu Ming surpassed the spirit god realm, he had even reached the peak of the 4th level of the spirit god realm. This was truly too shocking. After reaching the spirit god realm, they knew very well how difficult it was to advance a level. But to Lu Ming, it didn't seem difficult at all. Also, they looked at Xian Yanqing. They naturally saw through Xian Yanqing's cultivation. He was at the peak of the 3rd level of the spirit god realm. Strong, too strong. The point was that Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing were still so young. It was truly shocking that they had reached this level at such an age. They were at such an age. In comparison, the geniuses of the Talisman Puppet sect were a far cry from Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Perhaps Lu Ming can really lead the Talisman Puppet sect to rise, they thought. Wham! At this moment, the teleportation grand formation trembled slightly, and 2 more figures appeared. It was Xiaowan and Moe. Subconsciously, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others swept their spirit senses towards Xiaowan and Moe. With a sweep, their expressions changed drastically as they exclaimed, "Emperor! It's an emperor!" 2 emperors! Bai Shijin and the others exclaimed with strong vigilance. Their eyes were filled with shock. Seniors, this is Xiaowan, Senior Xia, and this is Demon Emperor Moe. Lu Ming hurriedly introduced. Emperor Wan, Xiaowan. The hearts of Bai Shijin and the others trembled. The name of Emperor Wan was not only known by the central continent, but also the experts of the Eastern Desolation, Southern Underworld, and other territories. Bai Shijin and the others naturally knew. After that, Bai Shijin and the others hurriedly bowed to Xiaowan and Moe. Yes, Xiaowan nodded casually and spread out his spirit sense. I didn't expect that the Talisman Puppet sect wouldn't be here. Back then, it was a famous sect in the Eastern Desolation. Xiaowan spoke slowly, causing Bai Shijin and the others to feel slightly embarrassed. Senior Xia, I'll show you around. Lu Ming smiled. After 2 years, he returned to the Talisman Puppet sect. Lu Ming was in a good mood. This was the place that truly belonged to Lu Ming. It was the place that could be controlled by him. Xiaowan's force was just an alliance. Xiaowan nodded. Everyone stepped into the air and flew into the distance. On the way, Xiaowan swept his gaze and nodded secretly. It seems that I've still underestimated Lu Ming. Other than not having an emperor, the strength he has isn't weak. What a powerful junior. He's trying to break through to the emperor realm. Once he breaks through, it will be no small matter. Xiaowan's gaze looked towards the north, his eyes shining brightly. Seeing this scene, Lu Ming knew that Xiaowan had sensed Supreme Nine Sons. In the past 2 years, Supreme Nine Sons had been in seclusion, trying to break through to the emperor realm. Father, mother. Immediately after, Lu Ming's gaze turned to the front. In front of him, Yan Kuangtu condensed his true origin into a cloud and flew over with Lu Yuntian, Li Ping, Hua Qi, Bai Qi, Xue, and the others. Obviously, they had received news that Lu Ming had returned. Originally, only a few people knew that Lu Ming had gone to the central continent and left his second body to guard the Talisman Puppet sect. Other than Bai Shijing, Yan Kuangtu, and a few other supremes, only Lu Ming's parents knew. However, ever since Lu Ming's true identity was exposed during the million-year sacrifice battle in the Holy City, the Wang family's patriarch, The Jiang family's patriarch, Di Xin, and the others returned to the eastern wilderness. News of Lu Ming's appearance in the eastern wilderness spread. The Emperor Heavenly Divine Palace publicly revealed that Lu Ming's second body was fake outside the Yin and Yang mountain. Only then did the others in the Talisman Puppet sect know that Lu Ming had left the Yin and Yang mountain for the central continent. Of course, no one would think of such a miraculous secret art like the twin life restriction. They all thought that Lu Ming's second body in the Talisman Puppet sect was someone else in disguise. Now that Lu Ming had returned, they naturally wanted to see Lu Ming after receiving the news. Lu Ming pulled Xian Yanqing and flew forward, greeting Lu Yuntian and Li Ping. "Father, mother!" "Ming, it's good that you're back." Although Lu Yuntian and Li Ping knew that Lu Ming was safe and sound through Lu Ming's second body, they were still overjoyed to see the real Lu Ming. Then, their gazes fell on Xian Yanqing. After being stunned for a moment, a smile appeared on their faces. Li Ping happily held Xian Yanqing's little hand and said, "Miss Yanqing, long time no see. Ming, finally brought you back. Good, good. Uncle, Auntie." Xian Yanqing's little face blushed slightly as she saluted Lu Yuntian and Li Ping. The two elders nodded repeatedly, overjoyed. "Haha, so this is my younger sister-in-law. Truly a national beauty, rarely seen in this world." Yan Kuangtu laughed loudly, causing Xian Yanqing's little face to turn even redder. "Big brother Yan." Lu Ming greeted Yan Kuangtu, Hua Qi, and the others. Among the crowd, Bai Qi Shui looked at Xian Yanqing with a hint of loneliness in her eyes. Is this the woman Lu Ming likes? That year, in a fit of anger, she caused a great war in Nine Dragon City. She's truly devastatingly beautiful. Only such a woman is worthy of Lu Ming. Bai Qi Shui sighed in her heart, forcing a smile on her face. She stepped forward and greeted Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing. Then Lu Ming introduced Xiao Wan and Mo Yi to Yan Kuangtu and the others. However, Lu Ming only introduced the names and did not introduce Xiao Wan's cultivation. Only Yan Kuangtu was shocked when he sensed Xiao Wan and Mo Yi's cultivation. "Father, mother, go back to your residence first. I have something to do with the seniors. I'll find you later," Lu Ming said. "All right, it's fine. Go ahead," Lu Yuntian said. Then they went back. Yan Kuangtu stayed behind. Senior Xia, the Talisman Puppet sect, is now surrounded by the Emperor God Divine Palace. The palace master of the Emperor God Divine Palace is an emperor. Senior, are you confident in dealing with him? Chapter 1179. Since Xiao Wan and Mo Yi were here, it would be best if they could use Xiao Wan to get rid of Marshal King Di. Xiao Wan did not say anything. He stood in the air and looked to the east, as if he was sensing something. In the east of the Talisman Puppet sect, Marshal King Di was cultivating in seclusion. At this moment, he seemed to have sensed something. His eyes suddenly opened and two rays of bright light shot out. A shocking aura rose from Marshal King Di's body. "Who is spying on me?" Marshal King Di said slowly. Inside the Talisman Puppet sect. Boom! Xiao Wan's expression changed abruptly. A powerful aura involuntarily rose from his body. However, the aura was quickly withdrawn. What a powerful cultivation! I never thought that there would be such a person in the Eastern Barren Territory. Xiao Wan frowned and said seriously. Lu Ming was shocked. Could Marshal King Di be so powerful? Even Xiao Wan was serious. Lu Ming, the Marshal Emperor Di that you mentioned, is very powerful. If I was at my peak, I would be able to suppress him. However, I am not his match now. Don't provoke him for the time being. Give me some time, and I will not be afraid of him. Xiao Wan said slowly. Lu Ming, by Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others' faces changed. Was Marshal King Di really that powerful? Even Xiao Wan thought highly of him and said that he was not his match. All right. Lu Ming nodded. He knew that Xiao Wan had been suppressed for 30,000 years. Although he had recovered a little, he was still far from his peak. It would be too difficult for him to recover to his peak. Lu Ming, let's go back to Cold Blood Hall and rest for a few days before heading to Northern Plains. If you want to go to Northern Plains, you can come here within 3 days. Xiao Wan said to Lu Ming. After that, he and Mo Yi stepped into the air and returned to Cold Blood Hall through the trans-domain teleportation formation. After that, Lu Ming said goodbye to Bai Shijin and the others. He held Xian Yinqing's hand and went to Lu Yuntian and Li Ping's residence. In the next few days, Lu Ming stayed at the Lu family's residence. When he had time, he would visit Hua Qi, the Mystic Essence Sword sect, and the others. 2 years ago, Lu Ming had left behind a large amount of resources. After 2 years, everyone had made great progress. Both Hua Qi and Pang Shi had reached the martial emperor realm. His father, Lu Yuntian, had also become a martial king. Among them, his 2 disciples, Zhuang Shaoshan and Zhuang Xiao, had made the fastest progress. They had already become high-level martial kings. However, this kind of progress was still far from Lu Ming's expectations. This time, Lu Ming left more resources for the Lu family, Hua Qi, and the others. They had all kinds of power Upanishad crystals, pellets, herbs, and weapons. 3 days later, in the Talisman Puppet Sect's assembly hall, Lu Ming, Yan Kuangtu, and the various elders and eminent elders of the Talisman Puppet Sect were gathered. Lu Ming sat on the main seat at the top of the hall. This was strongly requested by Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others. Now, Lu Ming's cultivation had already stepped into the spiritual god realm, and he had reached the peak of the 4th level spirit god realm. He was qualified to take charge of the Talisman Puppet Sect. Therefore, Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others strongly requested that Lu Ming take the main seat. In the future, the Talisman Puppet Sect would be officially handed over to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was originally a Zongzi. Zongzi meant that when his cultivation improved and he was able to take charge, he could succeed the position of sect master. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, although it was still a little lacking, the Talisman Puppet Sect did not have an Emperor Realm expert. Therefore, the conditions were not too high. Lu Ming did not decline and accepted it calmly. Now he indeed needed his own strength. Seniors, I've already explained the situation in the Central Continent. If you have any suggestions or ideas, please feel free to speak. Lu Ming said, Zongzi, us old fellows have been sealed off from the Eastern Wilderness for many years. We know nothing about the situation in the Central Continent. You know much better than us. We'll listen to you and do whatever you say. Bai Shijin said, That's what I think too. Du Songjue said, Haha, Lu Ming, I'll do whatever you say. I'll drink with you. Yan Kuangtu gulped down a few mouthfuls of wine and laughed. All right, then I'll tell you what I think. Now that the Central Continent is in chaos and the various forces are at war and attacking each other, the strong are getting stronger and the weak are getting weaker and weaker. We can't sit still and wait for death. We have to take the initiative to attack and increase our strength. I've formed an alliance with the Chaotic Sky Divine Emperor and the Floating Mountain Sect. The Chaotic Sky Divine Emperor wants to conquer the Northern Plains. We can't miss this opportunity. I plan to gather a group of experts to fight with me. Firstly, we can obtain resources. Secondly, we can train ourselves. In the future, when we conquer the Northern Plains, we'll be able to communicate with the Northern Plains. That way, we'll be able to move freely. What do you think? Lu Ming explained his idea. Then we'll do as Zongzi says. Bai Shijin, Du Songjue, and the others nodded. Lu Ming, I'll fight with you. After staying in the Talisman Puppet Sect for so many years, there's no one to spar with. It's so boring. Yan Kuangtu said with a strong battle intent in his eyes. In the past, Yan Kuangtu was a war general of the Emperor Heaven Divine Palace. He was a battle maniac and had been cooped up in the Talisman Puppet Sect for the past few years. It was truly unbearable. Now that he heard that he could go to war, he naturally would not miss this opportunity. His heart was itching unbearably. I'll fight with Zongzi. I'll go too. Two founding elders of the Talisman Puppet Sect said. One of them was the founding elder of the puppet sect, Meng Chong. The other was the founding elder of the Talisman Puppet Sect, Jiang Ke. Both of them had the cultivation of sovereign realm. Great. I'm relieved to have the three of you together. Lu Ming was overjoyed. Then they discussed the specific details. In addition to Yan Kuangtu, Meng Chong, and Jiang Ke, the other experts of the other levels were also selected to follow Lu Ming to fight. Some of the younger generation were also selected to follow Lu Ming as a form of training. It was difficult to make progress in the path of cultivation by blindly cultivating. One had to take risks and fight to make a breakthrough. After the plan was made, they began to spread the news. Then, Lu Ming led hundreds of people into the cross-domain teleportation formation and headed to Cold Blood Hall. The teleportation formation of Cold Blood Hall flickered, and Lu Ming's figure appeared. Not long after Lu Ming appeared, a voice messaging Jade Charm came. Xiao Wan invited Lu Ming to the conference hall to discuss matters. Lu Ming led Yan Kuangtu, Meng Chong, and Jiang Ke to the conference hall and found that Xiao Wan, Moe, and some sovereigns of the Myriad Demons Abyss were all there. When the sovereigns of the Myriad Demons Abyss saw Lu Ming, they used their spiritual senses to scan Yan Kuangtu and the others. Their eyes flickered slightly. They did not expect that Lu Ming also had sovereigns following him. They knew that they had underestimated Lu Ming. They used to think that Lu Ming was alone, but now they realized that they were wrong. Lu Ming also had his own forces. Lu Ming sit. Xia Wan pointed to the seat beside him. Chapter 1180. I'll tell you my next plan. The Northern Plains Demon God Valley is my backup plan. However, 30,000 years have passed, and I don't know the exact situation. I'll go to the Demon God Valley alone and take control of it. Lu Ming will be in charge here. Wait for my news. After I take control of Demon God Valley, I'll open the cross-domain teleportation formation and connect it with Cold Blood Hall. They'll take the teleportation formation to Northern Plains. Xiao Wan told him his plan. Obviously, this was the best plan at the moment. Naturally, no one objected. Well, in that case, I'll leave now. Lu Ming, I'll leave this place to you. With that, Xiao Wan got up and took a step forward. When he stepped out, the space cracked and Xiao Wan disappeared into it. After Xiao Wan left, Lu Ming made arrangements for the people of Talisman Puppet Sect. Brother Yen, take this Emperor Spirit Pagoda. In front of a courtyard, Lu Ming stopped Yan Kuangtu and handed him a small fiery red pagoda. It was the Emperor's Spirit Pagoda that he had obtained from the Saint Mansion Secret Realm. He had lent it to Xiao Wan and returned it to Lu Ming after Xiao Wan recovered his Emperor cultivation. The Emperor's Spirit Pagoda was a fire tribute treasure with a fire domain. Yan Kuangtu's bloodline was the three-legged golden crow, and his flame power was unparalleled. It was most suitable for Yan Kuangtu, and would be even more powerful. This is an Emperor's Spirit Pagoda. Yan Kuangtu scanned it with his spiritual consciousness, and his face suddenly changed. Lu Ming, this is too precious. I can't accept it. Brother Yen, do you still need to be polite with me? Besides, the war is imminent. This Emperor's Spirit Pagoda can only exert its full power in your hands. It's useless in my hands. Lu Ming pushed, and the Emperor's Spirit Pagoda flew towards Yan Kuangtu. Seeing Lu Ming's firm attitude, Yan Kuangtu did not refuse and kept the Emperor's Spirit Pagoda. To be honest, the Emperor's spiritual tower was very useful to him. It had a fire domain which was helpful to his cultivation. It would also be useful for him to break through to the ruler level. Lu Ming, thank you. After Yan Kuangtu put it away, he solemnly clasped his fists towards Lu Ming with a rare, solemn, and serious expression. Haha, Big Brother Yen, I'm not used to seeing you like this. Lu Ming laughed and strode away. After returning to his residence, Lu Ming's glabella shone, and the figure of his second body appeared. A disc array appeared in Lu Ming's hand and flew to the second body. The second body caught it and continued to inscribe array formations with both hands. The second body's Tao of inscription was much stronger than it was 2 years ago. In an instant, numerous inscriptions flew into the disc. This disc array was the disc array given to him by the heavenly profound saint in the Saint Mansion's secret realm. As long as the second body controlled the disc array, he could enter the Saint Mansion's secret realm and obtain the heavenly profound saint's inheritance. Soon, the disc array shone brightly and formed a huge vortex. The second body nodded slightly to Lu Ming, then stepped into it and disappeared. After the second body disappeared, the vortex also disappeared. Everything was ready, and Lu Ming waited patiently. To his surprise, not long after, the floating mountain sect sent 2 supreme beings to assist Lu Ming in the conquest of the northern plains. Lu Ming was naturally overjoyed. With 2 more supreme beings, their strength would naturally be stronger. Time passed quickly. 2 days had passed in the blink of an eye. At this time, Lu Ming received news from Xiaowan that it was a success. Xiaowan had successfully taken control of the Demon God Valley. Everyone in the Demon God Valley, including the ruler, had surrendered to Xiaowan. Obviously, like the myriad demon abyss, Xiaowan had a backup plan. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to subdue an overlord so easily. Next, the cross-domain teleportation arrays of the 2 places were connected. Let's go! Lu Ming waved his hand, and the army set out. As for the Cold Blood Hall, only a few people were left behind to guard it. More than 100,000 soldiers were sent to the Demon God Valley through the teleportation array. Lu Ming led Yan Kuangtu and the rest to set out in the last batch. The Demon God Valley was one of the 5 overlord forces in the northern plains. It was powerful and had an emperor overseeing it. It was located in a vast mountain range. Inside, there were countless valleys of various sizes. Demonic qi filled the air, which was suitable for demonic Tao cultivators to cultivate. On the second day after Lu Ming and the rest arrived at the Demon God Valley, the army gathered in a huge valley. Xiaowan and Lu Ming stood at the front. Beside them were 2 other people. One was Mo Yi, and the other was a burly old man called Chu Luo. He was the Demon God Valley's emperor. In the valley, the myriad devil abyss, the Demon God Valley, and the talisman puppet sect experts that Lu Ming had brought with him were gathered. There are a total of 5 overlord forces in the northern plains. Each of them is very powerful. If we want to take down the other 4 overlord forces, we must attack as quickly as possible. Now, they are not aware of the Demon God Valley. If we wait until they are fully prepared, our battle will be much more difficult. I will discuss with Commander Lu. He and I will each lead an army to attack 2 forces. I will lead the army to take care of Golden Wave Cliff and Light Dragon Tower. Commander Lu, Mo Yi, Chu Luo, you will lead an army to take care of the Mountain Piercing Sect and 100 Beast Tribe. Take them down as quickly as possible. That way, the northern plains will be under our control. Xiaowan announced. Yes, the army obeyed. Although the people from the demonic God Valley, Chu Luo, and the rest were puzzled as to why Xiaowan would form an alliance with Lu Ming, they did not probe further. They only needed to follow Xiaowan's orders. Rumble. Huge warships appeared in the sky. Lu Ming and Xiaowan each took a warship and flew in 2 different directions. Lu Ming's army's first target was the Mountain Piercing Sect. Enemy attack! When they were close to the Mountain Piercing Sect, a loud roar came from within. Countless rays of light shone from within the Mountain Piercing Sect. The sect protection array rose. Auras burst out and figures flickered as they appeared in front of the Mountain Piercing Sect. Rumble. Lu Ming's warship stopped a few thousand miles away from the Mountain Piercing Sect. Lu Ming stepped out of the warship first. Behind him was a large army that followed Lu Ming. They stepped out of the warship and appeared in front of the Mountain Piercing Sect. Who is it? An angry roar came from within the Mountain Piercing Sect. A terrifying aura shot up into the sky and suppressed everything within a few thousand miles. A tall figure that was covered in yellow light appeared at the front of the mountain-piercing sect. An emperor. Obviously, this was the emperor of the mountain-piercing sect. Pung! Pung! Chu, Luo, and Mo Yi stepped out and came to the front. They released their emperor's aura and pressed forward. Emperors! 2 emperors! Countless people in the mountain-piercing sect exclaimed in shock. Chapter 1181. Chu Luo, it's you? Why did you bring people to my mount-piercing sect? The emperor of the mount-piercing sect looked at Chu Luo and shouted, Emperor of Wanshan, I advise you to lead the entire mount-piercing sect and surrender. Otherwise, today the mount-piercing sect will be destroyed. Chu Luo said coldly, Haha, surrender? Don't even think about it. Chu Luo, I knew that you have wild ambitions. It's useless even if you find helpers. Today we'll fight to the death. The emperor of Wanshan laughed mockingly. If you don't surrender, then let's fight. As soon as Chu Luo's voice fell, the aura on his body burst out violently and became even more terrifying. Boom! On the side, Mo Yi also erupted. The pressure of the emperor was vast and mighty. Demonic qi formed a pillar of demonic qi that soared into the sky. Boom! Boom! Mo Yi and Chu Luo stepped forward at the same time. Heaven and earth trembled under their feet. 2 terrifying demonic lights bombarded the mount-piercing sect. 2 earth-shattering explosions were heard. The entire mount-piercing sect shook violently as if there was a magnitude 10 earthquake. The mount-piercing sect's protective formation trembled violently under the bombardment of the 2 demon emperors. It could not resist and collapsed with a loud bang. In the northern plains, there were no cultivators who were proficient in the path of inscriptions. Therefore, the protective formation was not very strong. Kill! As soon as the protective formation was broken, the emperor of Wanshan roared and rushed into the sky. Countless mountains appeared around his body. There seemed to be hundreds of them. This was the emperor of Wanshan's domain, called the Wanshan domain. Wanshan, since you're courting death, I'll send you on your way. Chu Luo shouted coldly. Endless black, demonic light spread out around his body. Demonic domain. Similarly, Mo Yi also released his demonic domain and attacked the emperor of Wanshan together with Chu Luo. The 3 emperors immediately engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. In the sky, there was a terrifying fluctuation. This Chu Luo is so strong. He's slightly stronger than Mo Yi. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. Chu Luo's combat strength was slightly stronger than Mo Yi's. Joining forces with Mo Yi, it didn't take many moves to gain the upper hand. Kill! At this moment, Lu Ming waved his hand and the army set off, charging toward the Chuanshan sect. Kill! The disciples of the mountain-piercing sect also charged out. The 2 sides fought fiercely. Whoosh! Beside Lu Ming, a fiery red light shot out rapidly. It was Yen Kuangtu. He had his eyes on one of the Supremes. It was a 3-meter-tall man with bulging muscles all over his body. His whole body was emitting an earthy yellow light. He was also staring at Yen Kuangtu. Kill! The other party shouted as a broad axe appeared in his hand and chopped towards Yen Kuangtu. Yen Kuangtu was covered in flames as he punched out. Boom! The flaming fist accurately landed on the axe. The axe shook violently and the opponent's tall and burly figure also shook violently. Then he was forced to retreat. Kill! Yen Kuangtu's combat strength was invincible. Terrifying flames spread out towards Lu Ming, and his fists kept bombarding. The other party tried his best to fend off Zhang Xian's attacks, but with every move he made, he would be forced back several steps. After a few moves, the other party's body jolted violently, and a mouthful of blood spurted from his mouth. There was a look of horror in his eyes. They were both Supremes, but how could Yen Kuangtu's combat strength be so strong? Explode! He shouted and performed bloodline fusion, but what awaited him was Yen Kuangtu's storm-like attacks. Yen Kuang-tu transformed into a three-legged golden crow. With a flap of his wings, he instantly appeared in front of the other party. He grabbed with his claws and directly broke the other party's bloodline fusion. Then his wings were like a flaming heavenly blade, cutting the other party's body in half. Even the spirit deity couldn't escape. A supreme being was killed just like that, shocking everyone in the surroundings. Kill! Then, Yen Kuang-tu fixed his eyes on another supreme being and attacked him. Join forces, let's join forces. The Supremes shouted and joined forces with the other Supremes to fight against Yen Kuang-tu, but they were still at a disadvantage. A few years ago, in the Battle of Nine Dragon City, Yen Kuang-tu was able to fight against 3 Supremes alone. Now a few years had passed. Although Yen Kuang-tu hadn't broken through to the Emperor realm, he had taken another step forward. His combat strength was stronger than back then, and he could easily suppress 2 Supremes. In the end, another Supremes joined the battlefield and barely stopped Yen Kuang-tu. What a powerful Supremes! The Supremes who followed the myriad demons abyss and demonic god valley were secretly shocked when they saw the scene. They were shocked by Yen Kuang-tu's strength and knew that the force behind Lu Ming should not be underestimated. With Yen Kuang-tu fighting against several Supremes alone, the others had a much easier time. Originally, Lu Ming's side had more Supremes than the Mountain Crossing sect. In this way, it was completely one-sided. Earth Essence. This Mountain Crossing sect has a lot of people who practice Earth Essence and other essences. Lu Ming's eyes began to shine. Unlike Cold Blood Hall, the Mountain Crossing sect's essence was very simple. Although the Mountain Crossing sect's essence was mainly Mountain Essence and Earth Essence, there were also many who practiced other essences. Concept of fire, concept of water, concept of thunder, concept of wind. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. His figure dashed out like a flickering light and a passing shadow. He appeared beside the powerful figures of the Pangshan sect who had died in the battle. His devouring power erupted, devouring the intents, runes, and blood essence of the other party. Refine, refine for me. Lu Ming controlled the 9 dragons' bloodline and frantically refined it. At the same time, his figure flickered and rushed to other places. Every time he devoured, he would sense the other party's essence. Only when he felt that the other party's essence was compatible with his did he begin to devour. As he devoured and refined the 9 dragons' bloodline, Lu Ming's 5 essences began to slowly improve. The corpse of a supreme. Finally, Lu Ming came to the corpse of a supreme. It was the supreme who had been killed by Yen Kuang-tu. Lu Ming took out a jade bottle and guided it with his genuine vitality. 9 drops of blood essence, which were like bright red gems, were drawn out and stored in the jade bottle. I need to get more supreme blood essence. Lu Ming's eyes darted around. It was too difficult for him to upgrade his bloodline now. Previously, he had refined the blood essence of a supreme being, but his 9 dragons' bloodline had not been upgraded. It was still at level 8 of the divine level. However, Lu Ming had a feeling that after refining the blood essence of a supreme being, his bloodline was improving and was approaching level 9 of the divine level. This meant that the supreme blood essence was still very useful. It was just that he needed more of it. As long as there was enough supreme blood essence, his bloodline would improve sooner or later. Boom! Suddenly, the mountain rocks under Lu Ming's feet shook, and a stone spear condensed. The sharp spear pierced out from under Lu Ming's feet and pierced towards Lu Ming's throat. Sneak attack! Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. He did not dodge. His neck trembled slightly, and 5 colored essences surrounded him. He executed the hell-suppressing heaven skill, and a powerful force erupted. Bang! The stone spear directly collapsed. Lu Ming had already cultivated the hell-suppressing heaven skill to the point that every part of his body could explode with attacks. Even his throat could explode with powerful attacks. Chapter 1182. Not far away, a powerhouse from the mountain-piercing sect was shocked. Kill! Lu Ming's killing intent exploded as he took a step forward and charged towards the powerhouse. This person was at the 7th level of the spirit god realm. However, he was defeated by Lu Ming in less than 2 moves. Lu Ming broke his defense and pierced his heart with 1 move. Killed in 1 blow. After killing this person, Lu Ming continued to look for targets to devour. The battle was extremely intense, and the powerhouses of the mountain-piercing sect fell like raindrops. Lu Ming devoured while putting away the storage rings. As time passed, Lu Ming devoured the concept of heaven and earth of dozens of spirit god realm powerhouses. Enough, enough. Spirit god realm powerhouses have very strong self-awareness. I've absorbed too much. Even if I refine it, it will be very impure and affect my foundation. I need time to refine it. Lu Ming's figure flashed, and he retreated out of the battlefield and returned to the warship. Xian Yinqing was not on the warship, but fighting outside to temper himself. Lu Ming asked Meng Chong and Jiang Ku to protect Xia Yinqing secretly in case anything happened to Xian Yinqing. Lu Ming stood on the warship, refining the concept runes that he devoured while observing the battle. In the sky, the Emperor of Wanshan was completely suppressed by Chu Luo and Mo Yi. He was already injured, and his defeat was certain. It was the same for the battlefield below the Emperor realm. The mountain-piercing sect was powerless to reverse the situation. Wanshan surrender. Don't make a meaningless struggle. Chu Luo said coldly. Don't even think about it. Unless you kill me today, you won't have an easy time. The Emperor of Wanshan roared with cold killing intent. He began to attack, intending to escape. As long as he escaped, he would launch a crazy revenge in the future. The crazy revenge of an emperor was terrifying. As long as the emperor was not here, no one was his match. Then I'll kill you today. Chu Luo revealed strong killing intent, and so did Mo Yi. They used all their strength to kill the Emperor of Wanshan. Clang! At this moment, below, a fiery red light bloomed, and the surrounding temperature rose sharply. Yen Kuangtu was fighting the 3 Supremes. At this moment, the Emperor's spirit pagoda appeared above Yen Kuangtu's head. It vibrated gently, and a circle of fire spread out. The 3 Supremes of the mountain-piercing sect were hit by the Emperor's spirit pagoda. Emperor's spirit weapon. One of the Supremes roared in horror. Kill! Yen Kuangtu took out the Emperor's spirit pagoda, and his battle prowess was raised to a terrifying level. He took a step forward, and the Emperor's spirit pagoda enlarged, suppressing one of the Supremes. No, the sovereign was locked down by the power of the Emperor's spirit pagoda. It was difficult for him to escape, and he could only passively resist. Bang! Under the suppression of the Emperor's spirit pagoda, that supreme being was unable to resist at all. He was smashed into pieces and died on the spot. After killing one utmost exalted, Yen Kuangtu charged towards another utmost exalted. The expressions of the remaining 2 supreme beings changed greatly. They didn't dare to fight, frantically retreating. Yen Kuangtu stared at one of them and chased relentlessly. In the end, he caught up and killed him. Supreme blood essence. Lu Ming's body moved again. He rushed toward the corpse of the Supremes to collect the supreme blood essence. Of course, he wouldn't let go of the Supreme's storage ring. He planned to give it to Yen Kuangtu after collecting it. Lu Ming collected the blood essence of the 2 Supremes killed by Yen Kuangtu. In addition, Lu Ming also collected the blood essence of one of the Supremes killed by others. Lu Ming was the commander. When the people on his side saw this, they naturally wouldn't stop him. As for the mountain-piercing sect, they couldn't even take care of themselves. Naturally, no one stopped Lu Ming. Devour a part of the true yuan. Lu Ming used his devouring power to devour the true yuan of several 8th and 9th layer spirit god experts. He then returned to the worship and continued to refine it. Since his intent realm was increasing, his cultivation would naturally increase as well. As the energy was refined and turned into true yuan, Lu Ming began to break through to the 5th layer spirit god realm. Boom! Boom! True yuan surged, stirring up thousands of waves as it constantly attacked the bottleneck. At this time, the battle between the emperors in the sky was even more intense. The Emperor of Myriad Mountains was desperately trying to escape. Chu Luo and Mo Yi attacked with all their strength. At this time, the Emperor of Myriad Mountains was severely injured. His body was almost torn apart, and blood was seeping out of his body. "You can't kill me. Explode!" The Emperor of Myriad Mountains' eyes were filled with madness. His Myriad Mountains domain erupted, and his spirit body shone. He roared. His body was really about to split apart, and at the same time his domain exploded crazily. A terrifying power swept towards Chu Luo and Mo Yi. "This lunatic!" Chu Luo and Mo Yi shouted angrily. The Emperor of Myriad Mountains was using a self-destructive method to block them. He wanted to buy time for himself to escape. It was too difficult to kill an emperor who was desperately trying to escape. Whoosh! After blocking Chu Luo and Mo Yi, the Emperor of Myriad Mountains took the opportunity to escape. But at this time, a fiery red giant pagoda appeared in the sky and suppressed the Emperor of Myriad Mountains. It was Yan Kuangtu. At the critical moment, he controlled the Emperor's spirit pagoda and rushed towards the Emperor of Myriad Mountains. Emperor's spirit weapon, damn it! The Emperor of Myriad Mountains roared, and his hands bombarded the Emperor's spirit pagoda. The Emperor's spirit pagoda shook violently, and Yan Kuangtu's body was also pushed back. But in the end, he managed to block the Emperor of Myriad Mountains. Yan Kuangtu's cultivation was already very close to the martial royal realm. With the addition of the Emperor's spirit weapon, his combat strength could barely contend with an emperor. With this block, Chu Luo and Mo Yi had arrived. "Myriad Mountains, your end is already decided." Chu Luo shouted and joined forces with Mo Yi. A terrifying attack burst out and shrouded the Emperor of Myriad Mountains. Clang! Yan Kuangtu controlled the Emperor's spirit pagoda and attacked the Emperor of Myriad Mountains again. The seriously injured Emperor of Myriad Mountains was besieged by the 3 experts and could no longer escape. Royal blood spilled in the sky. In the end, the Emperor of Myriad Mountains was killed by the 3 experts and fell in the sky above the Chuanshan sect. An emperor of a generation had fallen, just like that. At the sight of this, Lu Ming's heart still trembled. So what if he was an emperor? So what if he dominated the divine wilderness continent? Didn't he still fall? This was the divine wilderness continent. Overseas, the larger continents, and even the center of the primordial realm. The primordial continent was more dangerous, and there were more experts. The cultivation of an emperor could also fall and not be able to protect himself. Being an emperor is not my end. I need to climb to a higher realm. Otherwise, I can't even protect myself, let alone my family. At this moment, Lu Ming's eyes were bright. His heart and vision were higher. In the past, his goal was to break through to the Emperor realm and kill Di. But now, his goal was not limited to the Emperor realm. His goal was to become a saint above the Emperor realm, or rather, a saint above the saint realm. Perhaps only by reaching a cultivation level that could dominate the primordial realm could he truly control his own fate and protect his family. Lu Ming sighed in his heart. The Emperor is dead. The ancestor has fallen. Chapter 1183. The 10,000 Mountains Sovereign is dead. Why aren't you surrendering? Chu Luo stood high in the sky looking down. His voice spread to every corner of the sect. The vast sovereign's aura covered the entire sect, making it hard for people to breathe. I surrender. I am willing to surrender. I surrender too. With the sovereign killed, many disciples and experts of the mountain-piercing sect no longer had the courage to fight and surrendered. You traitors! Have you forgotten the sovereign's kindness to you? There were also some who were more stubborn and would rather die than surrender. Naturally, they were killed on the spot. This was war. It was life or death. No one would be soft-hearted. Seeing this, more people of the mountain-piercing sect surrendered. Next, the battlefield was cleaned up and the aftermath was arranged. Lu Ming did not participate. He sat cross-legged on the warship, wholeheartedly refining the concept runes and refining the energy to break through. Boom! Not long after, a powerful aura erupted from Lu Ming's body and rushed into the sky, attracting many people's attention. He broke through. Chu Luo, Moe, and other experts looked at Lu Ming with shock in their eyes. He only wandered around the battlefield once, and his cultivation actually broke through. Moreover, at such a young age, he actually broke through to the 5th level of the spirit god realm. It was really shocking. Lu Ming's aura erupted, and in the next moment it was restrained. However, Lu Ming did not end his cultivation. Instead, he continued to refine the concept runes that he devoured. He had devoured dozens of concept runes from experts. At the very least, they were all above the 6th level of the spirit god realm. Their comprehension of the concept of heaven and earth was very profound. Lu Ming had to spend a lot of effort to refine them. Half an hour later, the battlefield was cleaned up. The army gathered and prepared to fight the next force, the 100 Beast tribe. Speed was crucial in war. They had to set off immediately. At this time, Lu Ming finished refining and got up to the front of the army. Set off for the 100 Beast tribe, Lu Ming ordered. The army reboarded the warship and set off for the 100 Beast tribe. As for the people who surrendered, they were engraved with a formation in their sea of consciousness to follow them to fight the 100 Beast tribe. Only a few people were left to guard the mountain-piercing sect headquarters. The warship tore through the air, flying towards the 100 Beast tribe at an astonishing speed. Lu Ming sat cross-legged in one of the warship's room, continuing to refine the concept runes. In the blink of an eye, half a day, the 100 Beast tribe, Lu Ming had finally refined the concept runes he had devoured. Was the concept of wind, concept of fire, concept of thunder, and concept of water have all reached greater mastery of the 4th level. The concept of earth has also reached the peak of lesser mastery of the 4th level. My cultivation has risen to the 5th level of the spirit god realm as well. The improvement this time is really great. However, it's too fast, so it's filled with impurities, causing my foundation to be unstable. I won't be able to continue devouring and improving in a short period of time. Lu Ming got up, walked out of the room, and came to the deck of the warship, looking into the distance. In front of him, thousands of miles away, countless spires appeared. These spires were all made of stone, and they were like sharp spikes that stood tall on the boundless grassland. This was the 100 Beast tribe. It could be said to be the most powerful tribe in the northern plains, an ancient tribe with an incomparably long history. Each of the spires was glowing, and the light from each spires gathered together to form a large formation, enveloping the 100 Beast tribe. Countless figures appeared in the 100 Beast tribe. Some rode on battle beasts hovering in the air, while others stood on the ground, forming a battle formation. Regardless of gender, they were all strong and burly, full of valiant aura. Obviously, the 100 Beast tribe had received the news of the battle at the mountain-piercing sect and had made preparations in advance. The warship stopped, and Lu Ming and the others flew out, stopping in front of the 100 Beast tribe. Boom! Boom! 2 terrifying auras erupted. Chu Luo and Moe stepped out, and the aura of an emperor spread toward the 100 Beast tribe. At this time, another aura rose from the 100 Beast tribe, and a burly middle-aged man stepped out, floating in the air, exuding a shocking aura. There was no doubt that he was an emperor, the leader of the 100 Beast tribe, the barbarian emperor. Chu Luo, it's really you, but I don't think your appetite is that big. First, you destroyed the mountain-piercing sect, and now you came to my 100 Beast tribe. It seems that you're one of the chaotic sky divine emperor's men, the barbarian emperor said. Previously, Xiaoluan had led his army to attack other forces, so the barbarian emperor obviously knew their background. Barbarian emperor, since you already know, I advise you to surrender. Otherwise, you'll end up like the mountain-piercing sect. Chu Luo said coldly. Haha, my 100 Beast tribe has a long history, and there has never been a case of surrendering before a battle. If you want to attack, then let's fight. The barbarian emperor laughed loudly, incomparably domineering. After he finished speaking, a yellow rod appeared above the barbarian emperor's head. It floated above the barbarian emperor's head and rapidly grew in size, emitting an extremely shocking fluctuation. An emperor's spiritual weapon. You also have an emperor's spiritual weapon. Chu Luo and Mo Yi exclaimed at the same time, and their eyes were filled with shock. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Back in the Saint Mansion's secret territory, there were a total of 4 emperor's spiritual weapons. He had obtained one, and Yang Patian, Tuobashir, and Monk Wuliang had each obtained one. Lu Ming's gaze swept across the area, and indeed he saw Tuobashir in front of the 100 Beast tribe. Tuobashir came from the 100 Beast tribe, and he must have obtained this emperor's spiritual weapon from the Saint Mansion's secret territory. Let's fight, even if my 100 Beast tribe loses. Don't think that you'll have an easy time. The barbarian emperor's eyes were filled with malice. Chu Luo and Mo Yi's faces were solemn. The barbarian emperor's combat strength was already very strong, and he was even slightly stronger than Chu Luo. Coupled with the emperor's spiritual weapon, his combat strength was even stronger. Even if the two of them joined forces, they might not be able to win. Even if they joined forces with Yan Kuangtu, whose combat strength was barely at the emperor realm, it was hard to say. Even if they could win, if the barbarian emperor fought to the death, it was not impossible to drag one of them down with him. Even if they could win this battle, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. However, at this point, they had no choice but to fight. Barbarian Emperor, since you're so stubborn, we can only fight and destroy your 100 Beast tribe. Chu Luo spoke and stepped out, his battle intent even stronger. Wait a minute. At this moment, Lu Ming suddenly spoke. Chu Luo frowned and glanced at Lu Ming with a trace of displeasure in his eyes. But when he thought of Xiaowan's words, he held it in and stopped in his tracks. Lu Ming stepped out and came to the front. Most of the 100 Beast tribes, people's eyes fell on Lu Ming. They were secretly surprised, not knowing where Lu Ming came from to be able to make an Emperor Realm expert obey his orders. A wait a minute made an Emperor Realm expert stop in his tracks. Lu Ming, it's him. Chapter 1184. What? He's Lu Ming? So he's Lu Ming, the one who defeated all the elites in the Middle Continent's sacred city. Everyone in the 100 Beast tribe was shocked by Tuobashir's words. Back then, during the million-year sacrificial ceremony of the ancient sage dynasty in the sacred city, Lu Ming had consecutively defeated giant-level geniuses. He was already famous in the divine wilderness continent and was regarded as an unparalleled genius, second only to Longchen. They didn't expect to see Lu Ming here. At this moment, not only Chu Luo, Mo Yi, and the rest, but even the people from the 100 Beast tribe were curious. They did not know why Lu Ming had stopped Chu Luo. Lu Ming glanced at the 100 Beast tribe and looked at the barbaric emperor. He said in a clear voice, "The 100 Beast tribe has a long history. Wouldn't it be a pity if it were to be destroyed? Barbaric emperor, why don't we make a bet?" A bet? Many people were surprised. A bet? How? You want to make a bet with me? What are we betting on? How? The barbaric emperor asked. Let's bet on the issue between us and the 100 Beast tribe. This bet, if I win, the 100 Beast tribe will surrender unconditionally. If I lose, I will bring my people and leave immediately. From now on, I will never set foot in the territory of the 100 Beast tribe. Lu Ming said. Everyone was shocked by his words. It was a huge bet on the fate of the 100 Beast tribe. How should we bet? The barbaric emperor asked again. It's simple. Tuobashir is a peerless elite with great combat strength. Let's bet on my battle with Tuobashir, Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, let's not bet. I know you're powerful, and I'm no match for you. Before Lu Ming could finish, Tuobashir interrupted Lu Ming. That's right. Lu Ming, I can see that your cultivation has reached the level 5 spirit god realm. Tuoba is no match for you. The barbaric emperor said. Those words caused the 100 Beast tribe and Tuoba to reveal astonished expressions, especially Tuoba. He was very clearly aware that Lu Ming was only at the 3rd level of the spirit god realm when they were in the holy city. How long had it been since then? Yet Lu Ming had entered the 5th level of the spirit god realm. This was too terrifying and too abnormal. Listen to me first. What I mean is that I will suppress my cultivation level to the same level as Ta-Ba-Shir's. Ta-Ba-Shir's current cultivation level should be at the peak of the 3rd level of the spirit god realm. I will also suppress my cultivation level to the 3rd level of the spirit god realm. Moreover, I will only bet on one move. I will defeat Ta-Ba-Shir in one move. If I can't defeat Ta-Ba-Shir in one move, I will lose the battle. Lu Ming said. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Defeating Tuoba in one move at the same level? How could this be? What? You suppressed your cultivation to the 3rd level of the spirit god realm and defeated me in one move. Tuoba widened his eyes and glared at Lu Ming in anger. This was an insult to him. That's right. Tuoba, do you dare? Lu Ming said. Why wouldn't I dare? Lu Ming, I agree to fight with you. No one at the same level as me can defeat me in one move. Tuoba strode forward with anger in his eyes as he glared at Lu Ming. Yes, Tuoba didn't believe that there was anyone at the same level as him who could defeat him in one move. This was impossible. Long Chen was able to defeat him in one move during the Battle of the Holy City because Long Chen's cultivation base was higher than his. At that time, Tuoba had just reached the 3rd level of the spirit god realm, while Long Chen was definitely at the 4th level of the spirit god realm, or even stronger. He was also very clear about Lu Ming's strength. When Lu Ming fought Ming Zi, it was quite difficult for him. He had to exchange many moves to defeat Ming Zi. Tuoba strength wasn't weaker than Yang Potion's. Yang Patian was ranked 3rd among the 5 giants of the central continent. Even if he was weaker than Ming Zi, it was only by a little. Now Tuoba was even stronger. Moreover, he had recently made a breakthrough in one of his secret techniques, which leaned towards defense. Tuoba was originally leaning towards defense. Even Yang Potion's space intent couldn't break through his defense. Now that his defense was even stronger, his confidence was greatly boosted. He thought that he could suppress Yang Patian. Therefore, he didn't fear Lu Ming in a battle of the same level. Now, Lu Ming actually said that he could defeat him in one move. This was an insult to him, which made him furious. Old ancestor, let him fight with me. Let's bet on this. I will definitely make them retreat. Tuoba looked at the barbaric emperor. The barbaric emperor frowned slightly. He couldn't figure out Lu Ming's strength. However, he had the same thoughts as Tuoba. Tuoba talent was extremely rare in the history of the 100 Beast tribe. He was much stronger than the barbaric emperor when he was young. He also didn't believe that Lu Ming could defeat Tuoba in one move at the same level. All right, I'll bet with you in this battle, the barbaric emperor said after pondering for a moment. All right, barbaric emperor, let's make a blood oath. After all, this matter is of great importance. It won't be good if one side goes back on their word, Lu Ming said. However, I want to know if you can make the decision. If you agree and they go back on their word, what will you do? The barbaric emperor looked at Chu Luo and Mo Yi. I'm the supreme commander. I have full authority to make the decision, Lu Ming said. His words shocked the barbaric emperor and the others. They found it hard to believe that Lu Ming was the supreme commander, leading an army that included the Emperor realm experts. Commander, please think thrice. Chu Luo Mo Yi and the others spoke to Lu Ming through voice transmission. They had heard of Tuoba name, but they found it hard to believe that Lu Ming could defeat Tuoba in one move at the same level. There's no need to say more. I have my own plans. Lu Ming waved his hand, interrupting Chu Luo and the others. Seeing this, The barbaric emperor was relieved and made a blood oath with Lu Ming. If Lu Ming was defeated, the army would withdraw. If Lu Ming won, the 100-Beast tribe would surrender unconditionally. Patriarch, if Lu Ming really wins, what should we do? A venerable from the 100-Beast tribe asked the barbaric emperor worriedly through voice transmission. I've also considered this matter. Now that the world is in chaos, the major forces are at war with each other. No force can stay out of this and will be implicated. The war will come sooner or later. If we don't handle it well, our tribe will be annihilated. If Lu Ming can really defeat Tuoba Shur in one move, it will prove that he is a heaven-defying talent. His future will be limitless. If he doesn't die, there's a high possibility that he will dominate the divine wilderness in the future. It might not be a bad choice for us to submit to him. The barbarian emperor secretly transmitted his voice to that paragon, telling him what he was thinking. As the barbaric emperor, he had lived for a long time. Naturally, he wouldn't agree to the bet with Lu Ming on a whim. He had thought it through carefully. In fact, Lu Ming had also considered this point. His current cultivation was still weak. If he relied on his cultivation, he wouldn't be able to intimidate the crowd. Therefore, he had to show his advantage. His advantage was his talent and his age. He was still young, in the golden age of a cultivator. His future was limitless. Only by displaying his astonishing talent would these big shots be intimidated and be willing to submit to him, just like how Xiao Wan agreed to form an alliance with him because of this point. Lu Ming, let's fight. Chapter 1185. Be careful. Lu Ming said as his aura rose. When Lu Ming's aura rose to the 3rd level spirit god realm, it stopped. He suppressed his cultivation to the 3rd level spirit god realm, the same realm as Tuoba Shur. Roar! Roar! Inside Lu Ming's body, the sound of a dragon's roar could be heard. Waves of dragon power erupted one after another. The surface of Lu Ming's skin was suffused with a purple glow. Lu Ming's muscles bulged and were filled with explosive power. Tuoba Shur's eyes turned serious. He didn't dare to delay and raised his cultivation to the maximum. At the same time, a bloodline appeared above his head. Tuoba Shur's bloodline was a rock. To be precise, it was a huge rock that was as big as a mountain. It was crystal clear like a huge diamond. Tuoba Shur performed the bloodline fusion and turned into a huge rock. His voice sounded, Lu Ming, come on. His voice was filled with confidence. At this moment, he performed the bloodline fusion. Among his peers, he was confident that no one could beat him in terms of defense. He didn't believe that Lu Ming could defeat him in a single move. Haha, he's going to win. Lu Ming can't break through Tuoba Shur's defense. He's too confident. Overconfidence is arrogance. The people of the 100-Beast tribe were overjoyed. Fight! The 3rd bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head. In an instant, endless killing intent surged from Lu Ming's body. A wisp of power from the 3rd bloodline entered Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's body was covered in a layer of bloody light. As Lu Ming's cultivation increased, the power he borrowed from the 3rd bloodline also increased and became stronger. Boom! Lu Ming took a step forward and threw a punch at Tuoba Shur. In this punch, one could vaguely see the shadow of the suppressing prison monument on his fist. It emitted an aura that could suppress the heavens. At his spine, the suppressing prison monument trembled slightly, increasing the power of the suppressing prison skill to the maximum. This, Lu Ming's punch, caused the 100-Beast tribe's experts' expressions to completely change. Lu Ming's punch was too terrifying, too shocking. Block it. Tuoba Shur also felt the terrifying power of this fist. Before the fist even arrived, the powerful pressure already made his heart tremble. The blood vessels he transformed into trembled, and a layer of light appeared. His defensive power became even stronger. Boom! Finally, Lu Ming's fist landed on Tuoba Shur's bloodline. The light screen shook violently and then broke. The fist landed on Tuoba Shur's bloodline. An earth-shattering sound rang out, and the space shattered like a spider web. Kacha! Compared to Tuoba Shur's bloodline, Lu Ming's fist was very small. However, Tuoba Shur's bloodline emitted a cracking sound at the place where his fist struck. A huge, diamond-like rock revealed a crack. In an instant, the crack expanded rapidly and eventually exploded with a loud bang. Tuoba Shur's body was revealed from the rubble. His face was pale as he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. His body flew backwards like a cannonball and landed on the ground in an arc boom. Tuoba Shur smashed into the ground, and it took him a long time to get up. The scene was dead silent. He won. Chu Luo Moyi, and the others muttered to themselves. Their eyes were filled with shock. Moyi spent most of his time cultivating in the myriad demon abyss, so he didn't know much about the geniuses in the outside world. However, Tuoba Shur's bloodline just now was a 9th grade divine realm bloodline. It was even more talented than him when he was young. With such amazing talent, he was defeated by Lu Ming in one move. Moreover, they were at the same grade. This shocked him greatly. Defeated? How can this be? The 100 Beast Tribe members were also shocked by this scene. They couldn't say a word for a long time. The peerless genius of the 100 Beast Tribe, a genius that only appeared once in 100,000 years. He was regarded as the future genius of the 100 Beast Tribe. However, he was defeated in one move by someone at the same grade. This was hard for them to accept. They looked at Lu Ming and Tuoba Shur in a daze, as if they were dreaming. I lost. Tuoba Shur got up and said with difficulty. A dejected look appeared in his eyes. He was defeated by Lu Ming in one move. It was hard for someone as arrogant as him to accept this fact. At the same time, he was also extremely shocked. Compared to the battle of the sacred city, Lu Ming had become much stronger. Now, was Long Qin, who was known as the top expert in the world, still a match for Lu Ming? Tuoba Shur wasn't the only one who was shocked. The barbarian emperor was also shocked. This young man is unbelievable. Unbelievable. The barbarian emperor's eyes flickered, and a sentence kept repeating in his heart. Barbarian emperor, I have one. Shouldn't you fulfill your promise? Lu Ming looked at the barbarian emperor. Don't worry. The people of the 100 Beast Tribe are true to their words. Since you have one, the 100 Beast Tribe will surrender, the barbarian emperor said. His voice reverberated throughout the place. The people of the 100 Beast Tribe sighed, but no one said a word. Yes, the people of the 100 Beast Tribe were true to their words. Moreover, they also understood that if they were to fight today, the 100 Beast Tribe wouldn't be able to escape destruction, just like the mountain-piercing sect. However, at this time the barbarian emperor's tone changed. His gaze swept across Chu Luo, Moyi, and the others before landing on Lu Ming. Lu Ming, the 100 Beast Tribe will only surrender to you, and no one else. Chu Luo and Moyi's faces changed when they heard this. The barbarian emperor's meaning was clear. He only wanted to surrender to Lu Ming and no one else, not Xiaowan. All right, I will be the commander-in-chief. Naturally, you will surrender to me. Lu Ming grinned. This was the result he wanted. The 100 Beast Tribe would only be considered as his force if they surrendered to him. In the future, they would definitely stand on his side. This way, his strength would skyrocket and he would be able to stand on equal footing with Xiaowan. Brother Tuoba, I apologize for offending you just now. Lu Ming cupped his fists at Tuoba Shur. I am ashamed of my inferiority to Brother Lu's talent. Tuoba Shur sighed and shook his head. However, there was admiration in his eyes. Next, the 100 Beast Tribe retracted the formation and held a ceremony to surrender to Lu Ming. Not long after, Lu Ming received news that Xiaowan's side had been successfully conquered. On Xiaowan's side, one of the overlords was destroyed while the other surrendered. One of the overlords did not surrender, and its emperor was personally killed by Xiaowan. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Xiaowan's combat strength was truly shocking. He could kill an emperor alone, and this was before he had fully recovered. He wondered how powerful he would be when he recovered to his peak. At this point, the 5 overlords of the Northern Plains were either destroyed or surrendered. Not to mention the other smaller forces, they all surrendered. The Northern Plains was considered unified. A few days later, the news of the unification of the Northern Plains spread throughout the divine wilderness continent. Although the heroes of the Middle Continent were shocked, they had no time to care about other things. The war in the Middle Continent was even more intense. The major forces could not even take care of themselves. The Imperial Xia family and the heaven-guarding Divine Army were fiercely fighting in the Earth's core sea in the middle of the Middle Continent. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. The remaining Overlord forces that did not participate in the alliance were also fighting each other. Chapter 1186. In a secret chamber in the demonic God Valley, Lu Ming sat cross-legged and took out a jade bottle. There were 9 drops of blood essence that looked like blood diamonds in the jade bottle. This was the sovereign's blood essence. 7 days had passed since the 100 Beast tribe surrendered. In these 7 days, most of the arrangements had been made. Moreover, the demonic aura in the Demon God Valley was abundant, which was beneficial to Xian Yinqing's cultivation. Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing came to the Demon God Valley to oversee it, while Xiao Wan led a group of people to oversee the 100 Beast tribe. Moreover, Lu Ming had already connected the Talisman Puppet Sect's trans-territory transportation array with the transportation arrays of the Northern Plains major forces. Now, the Talisman Puppet Sect could travel freely to the Northern Plains. In these few days, many people from the Talisman Puppet Sect had been sent to the Northern Plains to temper themselves. After arranging everything, Lu Ming planned to go into seclusion. The 9 dragons' bloodline appeared and sucked a drop of Sovereign's blood essence into his mouth before he started refining it. It was much easier to devour a drop of Sovereign's blood essence, unlike the last time when the 9 dragons' bloodline almost exploded. A few hours later, a drop of Sovereign's blood essence was refined and Lu Ming continued to devour another drop. Drop after drop, all 9 drops of blood essence were refined in less than 2 days. The 9 dragons' bloodline still hasn't leveled up. Lu Ming was speechless. In total, he had refined the blood essence of 2 supreme beings, as well as some perfected spirit gods, 9th-level spirit gods, and 8th-level spirit gods. However, his 9 dragons' bloodline still did not improve. The difficulty of leveling up a 9th-grade High God realm bloodline was too shocking. The 8 golden chakras around the 9 dragons' bloodline shone brightly. Lu Ming could feel that he was getting closer and closer to the 9th-grade High God realm bloodline. I don't believe it. Continue. Lu Ming took out another jade bottle that contained 9 drops of Sovereign's blood essence. Lu Ming continued to refine the blood essence. Inside the 100 Beast tribe's tallest stone tower, Xiao Wan sat at the top. Below him sat Chu Luo and Moe, the 2 sovereigns. Devil ancestor, Lu Ming's influence is growing bigger and bigger now. The barbarian emperor of the 100 Beast tribe said that he would only submit to Lu Ming and obey Lu Ming's orders. Coupled with the Floating Mountain sect and the Talisman Puppet sect that have allied with him, the future is not good for us. Chu Luo spoke to Xiao Wan. That's right. Moreover, Lu Ming's talent is astonishing. He's too terrifying and his progress is abnormally fast. I'm afraid that he'll be able to break through to become a ruler within 20 years. Once he becomes a ruler, I'm afraid that it'll affect your power and dignity, devil ancestor, Moe added. With a smile on his face, Xiao Wan raised his wine cup and slowly drank. After Chu Luo and Moe finished speaking, Xiao Wan smiled faintly and said, "Your vision is still too narrow, too short." Both Chu Luo and Moe were stunned, not understanding what he meant. Moe, both of you know that Lu Ming's talent is peerless. In the history of the divine desolate mainland, it's rarely seen since ancient times. With such talent, what do you think his future will be? As long as this child doesn't die, his future is unpredictable. Chu Luo pondered for a moment and said. Moe nodded. That's right. Lu Ming's talent is far inferior to this emperor's when I was young. Moreover, the most terrifying thing about this child is that I can't see through him at all. This child's first bloodline is the Nine Dragons bloodline. Needless to say, it's one of the legendary top 10 battle beasts with boundless potential. But this child's second bloodline is even more shocking. It's the prison suppressing steel. Perhaps you haven't heard of it, but I've vaguely seen a description of it in an ancient book overseas. Its origin seems to be shocking. As for this child's third bloodline, I can't see through it at all. However, I feel that it's unfathomable, as if there's an unimaginable power hidden within it that transcends common sense. That's why I formed an alliance with him. If he goes to Yuanlu in the future, there's a high possibility that he'll join one of those major sections. Then he might recommend us to join one of those major sects in Yuanlu. Both of you are emperors. You should pursue a higher realm. You should set your sights further. Xie Luan explained his thoughts in detail. It's actually so shocking. Demon ancestors' foresight is far beyond ours. After Chu Luo and Mo Yi heard this, their eyes were filled with shock. They only knew that Lu Ming's talent was peerless, but they didn't see as far as Xie Luan. If they could join a major sect in Yuanlu, it would be a fatal temptation for them. The reason why the Central Continent was in chaos and war was because of a Heavenly King token, a token that allowed one to join a major force in Yuanlu, the Heavenly King Hall. Therefore, the higher Lu Ming's talent is, the better. If he can break through to the Emperor realm one day, why not let me support him wholeheartedly? In the future, both of you must listen to his orders wholeheartedly. Do you understand? Xie Luan instructed. Yes, demon ancestor. Don't worry. Chu Luo and Mo Yi nodded. Chu Luo, return to the Demon God Valley and help Lu Ming guard the Demon God Valley, Xie Luan instructed. Lu Ming naturally didn't know that such an episode had happened. For the next few days, Lu Ming had been refining the sovereign blood essence. Lu Ming had refined 2 more sovereign blood essences. However, his 9 dragons bloodline still hadn't leveled up. It remained at level 8 divine level. In total, Lu Ming had refined 4 sovereign blood essences. How much sovereign blood essences do I need to level up? Lu Ming sighed and was a little speechless. Now he had refined all the sovereign blood essences in his hands. Forget it. I'll level it up slowly in the future. Lu Ming had no choice but to put down the matter of bloodline and began to polish his intent and condense his true origin. Lu Ming had improved too much after the battle at Chuanshan sect, especially his intent. All 5 of his intents had improved by a large margin. He needed time to polish them slowly and stabilize his foundation. Time passed quickly. 2 months passed in a flash. After spending 2 months, Lu Ming's foundation was finally completely stable. It was impregnable. In these 2 months, the outside world didn't change much. The Central Continent was still fighting, and there were no signs of it stopping. On a mountain peak in the Demon God Valley, there was a stone table. Lu Ming and the barbaric emperor sat opposite each other. Lu Ming was asking the barbaric emperor for advice. The barbaric emperor also cultivated the earth intent. Of course, now that the barbaric emperor had transformed the earth intent into the earth domain, his understanding of the earth intent was naturally very profound. The barbaric emperor told Lu Ming everything he knew. Lu Ming was greatly enlightened and learned a lot. He felt that it wouldn't be long before the earth intent broke through. Thank you for your guidance, Senior Barbaric Emperor. Lu Ming raised his wine cup and toasted the barbaric emperor. Haha, General Lu, you're too polite. I'm surprised by your comprehension ability. The barbaric emperor laughed. Lu Ming was the commander-in-chief, so the barbaric emperor and the others addressed Lu Ming as Commander Lu. Although the 2 of them were very different in age, they got along very well. They drank while talking about the martial Tao. Swish. Chapter 1187. Who is it? The barbarian emperor roared and his aura burst out. He soared into the sky and punched at the huge hand. Boom! There was a loud explosion. Then the barbarian emperor's body shook. He was no match for the attack and fell down. However, the huge hand did not stop there. It continued to grab at Lu Ming. After being enveloped by the huge hand, Lu Ming felt that the space around him was locked down. Lu Ming's body was pressed down by a boundless gravity, making it hard for him to move. "De!" Lu Ming shouted. Lu Ming was very familiar with the aura of the huge hand. It was Martial Monarch De. Lu Ming had not expected Martial Monarch De to make a move at this moment. Previously, Lu Ming had thought that De might make a move. However, there was a martial monarch in the Demon God Valley. Lu Ming thought that De would be afraid. Boom! 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 8 strands of dragon energy instantly burst out in Lu Ming's body. At the same time, his third bloodline appeared and a strong energy poured into Lu Ming's body. "Break for me! Break!" Lu Ming roared in his heart. He erupted with all his strength, trying to break the space around him. However, the space around him was extremely firm. Even with Lu Ming's current strength, he could not move it at all. "Who is it? You are courting death!" There was a loud roar. In another direction of the Demon God Valley, a shocking demonic light shot up. A vast demonic saber slashed at the huge hand. Boom! First, it was the barbaric emperor's punch. Then it was the saber. The gigantic hand finally collapsed and disappeared into nothingness. The pressure on Lu Ming also disappeared. Lu Ming's body felt light and he regained his freedom. Shwa! There was a flash of demonic light, and Chu Luo appeared beside Lu Ming. The barbarian emperor also arrived beside Lu Ming. A metal rod floated above the barbarian emperor's head. It gave off a terrifying aura. It was a martial monarch spirit weapon. The two looked at the sky with grave expressions. There was a flash of golden light in the sky, and a figure stepped out of a spatial crack. Martial Emperor De. It was Martial Emperor De. De of the Eastern Wasteland. What are you trying to do by attacking my Demon God Valley? Are you trying to start a war with us? Chu Luo shouted coldly. There were only so many sovereigns in the divine wilderness continent, so they naturally knew each other. I'm only here to take Lu Ming away. It has nothing to do with you. De's whole body was shining with golden light. He stood high in the sky like a high and mighty emperor, overlooking the world. Take General Lu away? What a joke! De, today not only can you take no one away, you can't even leave. The barbarian emperor's eyes flickered with malevolence. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, air-piercing sounds could be heard from all over the Demon God Valley. Many figures were flying over. The commotion just now had startled the entire Demon God Valley. Stop! Don't come any closer! Lu Ming's voice rang out, causing everyone to stop in the distance. When a ruler made a move, no one else could help at all. Two people did not stop and flew over directly. They were Xian Yanqing and Yan Kuangtu. Lu Ming. Xian Yanqing pulled Lu Ming's hand and looked at De in the sky with a worried expression. De. Yan Kuangtu licked his lips. The emperor's spiritual pagoda floated above his head, revealing a strong fighting spirit. If you don't hand it over, I'll take it myself. De's cold voice rang out. He clenched his fist in the void, and a golden battle sword appeared. Whoosh! Whoosh! The golden battle sword emitted endless golden light. A sword ray, as large as a mountain, bloomed with a vast pressure and violently slashed toward the barbarian emperor and the others. Attack! The barbarian emperor shouted and rushed into the sky. He held the iron rod in his hand, and it rapidly grew into a giant rod that was tens of thousands of meters long. He swept it toward Di Yi's sword ray. At the same time, Chu Luo's body surged with demonic qi. He slashed out a huge saber ray that also slashed toward the sword ray. Above Yan Kuangtu's head, the emperor's spiritual pagoda grew rapidly and blasted toward the sword ray in the sky. Boom! 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 3 consecutive terrifying roars rang out. First was the barbarian emperor. He held the giant rod and slammed it against the sword ray. His body shook violently as if he was facing an invincible force. His body fell like a cannonball. Then, Chu Luo's demonic saber was defeated by the sword ray and finally collided with Yan Kuangtu's emperor's spiritual pagoda. Bang! 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 The barbarian emperor, Chu Luo, and Yan Kuangtu were sent flying one after another. They retreated several hundred miles in the sky and spat out a mouthful of blood. Yan Kuangtu was the most injured. His face was pale and bloodless. Di had injured 2 sovereigns and Yan Kuangtu with one move. He had displayed a terrifying combat strength. How can he be so strong? Chu Luo shouted in disbelief. The barbarian emperor and Yan Kuangtu were shocked. The 3 of them had joined forces to block Di's sword, but the result was that all of them were injured. It was unbelievable. They had all dealt with Di before, but they had never expected Di's combat strength to be so strong. I want to take Lu Ming away. No one can stop me, Di said coldly. He stretched out his hand, and a big, golden hand formed out of thin air. It exuded a vast pressure and grabbed at Lu Ming. Don't even think about it. Yan Kuangtu, the barbarian emperor, and Chu Luo shouted. They exploded with all their strength and blasted out their strongest moves to stop Di. However, Di took a step forward, and 3 golden sword rays condensed out of thin air. They attacked the 3 of them and repelled them again. The big golden hand did not stop and continued to grab at Lu Ming. Boom! At this moment, the space in front of Lu Ming cracked. A black fist ray blasted out and collided with the big golden hand. The 2 disappeared. Then a tall figure stepped out. Demon ancestor. Chu Luo was overjoyed to see this person. Xiao Wan. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Xiao Wan stood in front of Lu Ming and looked at Di. He said, "It's rare to have an expert like you among the younger generation. However, with me here, you can't take Lu Ming away. Emperor Luan, you have been suppressed for 30,000 years and are no longer the same. Do you really think you can fight with me?" Di said, even in the face of Emperor Luan. He was still full of confidence. "Whether I can fight or not, we'll know after we try. Let's go up and fight," Xiao Wan said. He took a step forward and rushed up to the sky. Di glanced at Lu Ming and took a step forward. He rushed up to the sky with Xiao Wan. Boom! At an unknown height, there was a sudden roar. It was extremely terrifying. A round of light shone out, like a sun exploding in the sky. It could be seen even millions of miles away. Boom! 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 Then there was a continuous roar in the sky. Round after round of light shone. It was like a sun exploding at the same time. The scene was extremely shocking. Lu Ming and the others looked up to the sky. However, they could only see the dazzling light. They could not see the figures of martial Emperor Di and Xiao Wan. So powerful. Lu Ming frowned. He was shocked. The fluctuations and aura produced by the battle between Xiao Wan and Di were obviously much stronger than ordinary martial emperors. What realm had they reached? My eyes! Someone exclaimed. Chapter 1188. There were hundreds of explosions in the sky, as if hundreds of suns had exploded. If such power fell on the ground, it could destroy the earth and break through the earth's crust, causing a terrible disaster. At that moment, the sky suddenly became quiet. All the fluctuations seemed to have disappeared without a trace. What happened? Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Whoosh! At that moment, a figure flashed and Xiao Wan appeared. At that moment, Xiao Wan's aura was weak and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He was injured. Chu Luo, the barbarian emperor, and the others found it unbelievable that Xiao Wan was injured in the battle with martial royal demon ancestor. How is Di? Chu Luo asked. Di has retreated, Xiao Wan said with a serious look. I didn't expect the Eastern Barren Territory to have such an expert. With my current combat strength, I can't do anything to him. Senior Xia, What realm has Di reached? Lu Ming asked. To be honest, Di's combat strength was beyond his imagination. At first, he thought that Di was just an ordinary ruler. Now it seemed that he was not. He was much stronger than an ordinary ruler. Xiao Wan had recovered and was stronger than a few months ago. However, he was still injured in the battle with Di. Lu Ming, Martial Royal Realm, is the same as other realms. There are 9 levels, but the gap between each level is huge. The conditions in the divine region are too poor. It's not suitable for emperors to cultivate. Breaking through to the royal realm is the limit. It's too difficult to go further. Therefore, most of the emperors in the divine region are at LV1 Martial Royal Realm. For example, the barbarian emperor Chu Luo and most of the emperors in the central continent are at LV1 Martial Royal Realm. Xiao Wan explained. Chu Luo and the barbarian emperor nodded. Lu Ming's heart jumped. It seemed that the emperors he had seen were at the lowest level of Martial Royal Realm. Xiao Wan continued to explain. Once someone is able to break through to the second layer Martial Dominator Realm, their strength will increase tremendously, allowing them to suppress and even kill other martial dominators. The difference between the 2 layers is extremely obvious. I'm guessing that there are people at the same level in the royal family and the heaven-suppressing divine army. When I was at my peak, I was a 3rd layer martial emperor. Now, I have recovered to the peak of the 2nd layer martial emperor. However, it is extremely difficult to recover to the 3rd layer martial emperor. Firstly, the conditions in the divine, desolate continent are too poor. Secondly, after being suppressed for so many years, my foundation has been damaged. It will be very difficult for me to recover to my peak without a few years. Is Di's cultivation also at the peak of the 2nd level of the Martial Royal Realm? Lu Ming asked. That's right. Di's cultivation is indeed at the peak of LV2 Martial Royal Realm. He is not far from LV3 Martial Royal Realm. I feel that Di can break through to LV3 Martial Royal Realm at any time. At that time, he will be unrivaled in the divine wilderness continent. Xiao Wan said with a serious expression. Di is actually so strong? Yan Kuangta clenched his fists tightly. Lu Ming also had a serious expression in his eyes. He and Di were going to fight, but now it seemed that this battle would be much more difficult than he had imagined. I have to improve my strength as soon as possible. Now, my 2nd body has obtained the inheritance of the heavenly profound saint and is making rapid progress. My martial cultivation cannot fall behind. If my 2nd body and my martial cultivation both break through to the Emperor Realm, even if Di breaks through to the 3rd layer Martial Royal Realm, I will be able to suppress him. Lu Ming's eyes showed strong confidence and fighting spirit. If his main body and 2nd body both broke through to the Emperor Realm and joined forces, their power would be beyond imagination. You can all leave now. Xiao Wan waved his hand, and the people below the Emperor Realm dispersed one by one. Xiao Wan looked at Lu Ming again and said, Lu Ming, you don't have to worry too much. The conditions of the divine wilderness continent are indeed too poor. It is extremely difficult for a martial artist of the martial monarch realm to break through. It is not that easy for Di to break through to the 3rd level of martial monarch realm. He might not be able to break through to the 4th level of martial monarch realm within a few years. Back then, I was stuck at the peak of the 3rd level of martial monarch realm, unable to break through to the 4th level of martial monarch realm. If he can't break through to the 3rd layer martial royal realm, he can't do anything to you. Xiao Wan smiled and comforted him. Senior Xia, I'm fine. The stronger Di is, the stronger my motivation will be. I will kill Di with my own hands soon. That day won't be too far away. A sharp light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. Good, haha. Xiao Wan patted Lu Ming's shoulder and laughed. At this moment, Xiao Wan suddenly looked at the sky in the north. The others were stunned. What had Xiao Wan discovered? Could it be that Di had returned? However, they soon discovered something. In the sky in the north, a huge warship broke through the void and flew rapidly. Rumble. As the warship sailed past, it let out a deafening roar. It was like a divine sword that split the space in half. Everyone's faces changed. Was it coming for them? Who in the divine region would have the guts to do so? Moreover, it was coming from the north. Soon, they realized that they were overthinking. The warship wasn't coming for them, but flew past the Demon God Valley. From afar, the warship was engraved with beautiful patterns, and there was a misty light flowing on it. "Look, there's someone on the warship," Chu Luo shouted. Everyone saw a middle-aged man at the front of the warship. He was wearing a black robe and stood with his hands behind his back. Although he was standing there casually, he seemed to have a domineering aura. At this moment, the middle-aged man seemed to have felt Lu Ming and the others' gazes. He looked over. With just a glance, Lu Ming felt his heart pounding. It was as if he was in the vast starry sky, and he felt extremely small. Xian Yinqing, who was beside him, grabbed Lu Ming's hand and suddenly tightened his grip. His face turned pale. However, that person only gave them a glance before turning his head away and not looking at them again. He's so powerful. It's hard to predict his strength, the barbaric emperor said. Lu Ming turned his head and was shocked. At this moment, the barbaric emperor's forehead was covered in cold sweat and his eyes were filled with shock. Third-level martial royal realm. Xiao Wan frowned and muttered to himself. Everyone was shocked. How is that possible? Third-level martial royal realm? How could there be a third-level martial royal realm cultivator in the divine region? Chu Luo exclaimed in disbelief. Who said that they're from the divine region? I saw the patterns on the warship 30,000 years ago. If I'm not wrong, they're from the divine region. Xiao Wan said, Divine region? Why would they suddenly come to the divine region? The barbaric emperor said in surprise. On the other hand, Lu Ming, Xian Yinqing, and Yan Kuangta looked puzzled. Divine region? Where was that? Chapter 1189. The continent of divine ruins is a much more powerful continent than the divine wilderness continent. There are many experts there. Why are they here today? Lu Ming, do you want to go and take a look? Xiao Wan looked at Lu Ming and asked, All right, let's go and take a look. Lu Ming was also very curious about the reason why the continent of divine ruins had suddenly descended. The two of you stay here, just in case. Lu Ming and I will go and take a look. Xiao Wan instructed Chu Luo and the barbaric emperor. The two of them nodded. Little Qing, big brother Yan, wait for me here. Senior Xia, and I will be back soon. Lu Ming said to Xian Yinqing and Yan Kuangtu. Lu Ming, you have to be careful. Xia Yinqing warned. Lu Ming nodded. Let's go. Xiao Wan shouted softly. Demonic light swept Lu Ming, and he stepped into the air. He flew out and followed far behind the warship of the continent of God. The warship of the continent of divine ruins kept flying south at an extremely fast speed. Soon, it flew out of the northern plains and arrived at the central continent. The people of the continent of divine ruins seemed to be flying towards the place where the imperial family and the divine army are fighting. Xiao Wan said softly, Could it be that they are helpers that one of the two sides has invited? Lu Ming's expression changed slightly. If that was the case, the situation of the divine wilderness continent would change drastically. The warship broke through space and flew at an extremely fast speed, quickly approaching the central continent. There are people fighting up ahead. Xiao Wan looked into the distance and said, Lu Ming's expression was a little serious because there was a terrifying pressure coming from the south. Lu Ming sensed it carefully and could feel the space fluctuating slightly. There were definitely terrifying people fighting there because they were sure that the place of the battle was very far away. The warship of the continent of divine ruins suddenly stopped here. The black-robed, middle-aged man standing at the front of the warship looked into the distance, then stepped out and headed south. Let's go. Xiaowan and Lu Ming went around the warship and headed south. Boom! Boom! Not long after, he heard a terrifying fluctuation in the distant sky. Even though he was very far away, Lu Ming could vaguely see two figures fighting in the sky. His aura was so strong that it actually surpassed that of an ordinary ruler. So strong! Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. The two people who were fighting had terrifying combat abilities. They were above Barbarian Emperor and Chu Luo. Although they were not as terrifying as the battle between Xiaowan and De, they were not far off. They should be at the same level as Xiaowan and De. Below the battle, there was a huge lake. On both sides of the lake, there were many experts. Earth's core lake, where the imperial family and the Heaven Suppression Army were fighting. The black-robed, middle-aged man from the Godly Ruins continent appeared not far away. He looked at the battle in front of him and did not participate in it. Xie Sheng, you are already so old. You are no match for me. In the midst of the great battle, a voice rang out. Lu Ming's expression changed. He had heard from Xian Yinqing that the previous sacred emperor was called Xie Sheng. He was the grandfather of the current sacred emperor, Xie Qitian. He had stepped down from the position of sacred emperor 6,000 years ago and had been cultivating in seclusion. The outside world thought that Xie Sheng had passed away after so many years. However, some people said that Xie Sheng was still alive, but it had never been confirmed. Now, it was proven that Xie Sheng was indeed still alive. The other side is Baizhan Martial Emperor. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly as he looked into the distance. The person who was fighting with Xie Sheng was the Heaven Suppression Army's top expert, Baizhan Martial Emperor, who had won every battle. Both of them were the leaders of their respective sides. Their cultivations had reached LV2 Martial Emperor, and they were fighting fiercely. Whether I am your match or not, no one can tell until the end. Baizhan, I advise you to hand over the Heavenly King badge. It is the inheritance of the imperial family. It is not something you can take away. Xie Sheng said. His voice was very old, but it was like thunder. It rumbled between heaven and earth, and no one knew how far it had traveled. Xie Sheng, you are already so old. Don't think about the Heavenly King badge. Baizhan Martial Emperor burst out laughing. The battle between the two became even more intense. In the distance, the middle-aged man raised his eyebrows when he heard the words Heavenly King badge. He mumbled, I didn't expect the Heavenly King badge of the Godly Desolation continent to still be here. It seems like my trip here has not been in vain. After saying this, he flung his sleeves and took a step forward, rapidly approaching the battle between Xie Sheng and Baizhan Martial Emperor. Who's there? Who's there? Xie Sheng and Baizhan Martial Emperor sensed the middle-aged man's presence as he approached. They yelled and separated from each other, staring at the middle-aged man. They had only noticed the middle-aged man when he was so close to them, which gave them a great shock. They scanned the black-clothed, middle-aged man with their spiritual senses and found that they couldn't see through him. The two of them were even more shocked. At the sight of this, Lu Ming and Xie Wan were a little surprised. It seemed that the people from the mainland of Divine Ruins were not helpers of either the royal family or Xiaowan. Otherwise, Xie Sheng and Baizhan Wu Huang would not be so surprised. You have the Heavenly King badge? The middle-aged man glanced at the Baizhan Martial Emperor. Who are you? The Baizhan Martial Emperor asked with a frown. That's not what I'm asking. I'll ask you again. Do you have the Heavenly King badge? The black-robed, middle-aged man's voice turned cold. There was a hint of impatience in his tone, and it sounded like he was giving orders. The Baizhan Martial Emperor's face darkened upon hearing this. No one in the Godly Desolation continent would dare to speak to him in such a tone. I do have the Heavenly King badge, so what? The Baizhan Martial Emperor said. Oh, it's good that you have it. Hand it over. Give me the Heavenly King badge. The middle-aged man said, Ha ha ha. The Baizhan Martial Emperor burst out laughing and said, You're so funny, appearing out of nowhere and asking me to hand over the Heavenly King badge. Aren't you being too confident? I wonder if you have the ability to do so. The Baijan martial emperor's eyes flickered coldly. So you're not handing it over? Then I'll take it myself. The middle-aged man took a step forward as soon as he finished his words. Bang! Following this step, the sky and the ground began to vibrate vigorously. Below him, the earth core lake began to churn violently. Suppress! The middle-aged man said calmly as he lashed out with his palm, causing chi to gather in the sky, forming a towering ancient tree that suppressed the Baijan martial emperor. The Baijan martial emperor straightened his face as soon as the attack was executed. 100 battle godly fist. The Baijan martial emperor immediately lashed out 100 punches. Each of the punches contained a tremendous force that could penetrate the ground and destroy mountains and rivers. 100 punches gathered in the air and combined into a single punch, increasing its power by 100 times. Bang! The punch landed on the towering ancient tree, resulting in a deafening explosion. Suppress! The middle-aged man uttered another word as he pressed down with his palm, causing the ancient tree to expand and emit a green glow. Bang! Chapter 1190. The Baijan martial emperor's expression changed drastically as he tried his best to counterattack. However, his attacks were all useless as they were destroyed by the ancient tree. In the end, the ancient tree landed heavily on the Baijan martial emperor's body. The Baijan martial emperor screamed as his body fell into the earth's core lake. Boom! The Baijan martial emperor's body fell into the earth's core lake. Instantly, the earth's core lake rippled with waves from the place where the Baijan martial emperor fell into. In just a breath's time, the water in the earth's core lake was blown away and turned into steam. With the Baijan martial emperor as the center, there was not a single drop of water in the area. The crowd could only see the Baijan martial emperor lying in the earth's core lake, coughing up blood. The imperial family, Xie family, and the divine troop all widened their eyes in shock. The Baijan martial emperor was severely injured by the middle-aged man with a single attack. How was that possible? The Baijan martial emperor was the leader of the divine troop, the most powerful expert in the divine wilderness continent. He had never lost a battle. That was how the Baijan martial emperor got his name. But now, he had been defeated by a single attack. That was unbelievable. Xie Sheng was also shocked. The Baijan martial emperor was not weaker than him, but he had been defeated so miserably. Xie Sheng was terrified. So powerful! In the distance, Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. The middle-aged man was indeed a rank 3 martial emperor. You overestimate yourself. The middle-aged man looked down at the Baijan martial emperor and said, Now, are you going to hand it over or not? If you don't hand it over, I'll take it myself. His voice was filled with a hint of killing intent. His meaning was clear. If the Baijan martial emperor did not hand it over, he would kill him and take it himself. The Baijan martial emperor's face turned ugly, and he was not willing to give up. However, he was helpless against such an undefeatable opponent. In the end, he let out a long sigh and threw a badge at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man caught the badge and glanced at it. His face was filled with joy as he said, It's the Heavenly King badge. Although the deity ruins mainland was much stronger than the divine wilderness mainland, it was still a speck of dust compared to the Yuan continent. It was extremely difficult to join the major forces of the Yuan continent. The Heavenly King's badge was also a supreme treasure to him. Sir, you're not from the divine wilderness continent, right? Xie Sheng looked at the black-robed, middle-aged man with unwillingness in his eyes. Now that the Heavenly King token had fallen into the hands of the black-robed, middle-aged man, the royal family no longer had a chance. Both the imperial family and the Heaven Suppression Army were shocked when they heard this. If they were not from the divine wilderness continent, could they be from overseas? That's right. I'm from the godly ruins continent, Southern God Palace. You've lived for so long, so you should have heard of it, right? The black-robed, middle-aged man put away the Heavenly King token and explained in a good mood. What, are you from the Gate of God? Xie Xing seemed to be very surprised. His expression changed, and then he became very respectful. He cupped his fist and said to the middle-aged man in black, "So it's a master from God's Gate. Sorry for not going out to meet you. Forgive me." At the scene, the sovereigns had similar expressions as Xie Sheng. Other than being shocked, there was also a hint of respect. When the Baijian martial emperor heard this, the unwillingness in his eyes finally disappeared. Instead, it was filled with helplessness. Those below the sovereigns were at a loss. "He's really from God's Gate." Xie Wan muttered, "Senior, is God's Gate very strong?" Lu Ming asked curiously. "Of course. The Yuan realm is vast and boundless. Of course, most of the territory is the sea. The sea is endless, and there are countless continents in the boundless sea. Some of the continents are not far from each other. They are gathered in a region and are called the continent group. Just like the islands in the sea, some of the islands are gathered together and are called the archipelago. It's the same for continents," Xie Wan explained. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Outside the divine wilderness continent, there was no end to it. It was beautiful and colorful. The sea where the divine wilderness mainland is located is called the continent group of divine ruins. It's made up of dozens of large continents. Just from the name, you can tell that the continent group of divine ruins is the leader. The continent group of divine ruins is at least 10 times bigger than the divine wilderness mainland. There are many experts and outstanding people. The number of sovereigns is also much more than the divine wilderness mainland. The continent group of divine ruins is completely ruled by one force. That force is God's Gate. Xie Wan continued to explain. Lu Ming finally knew how strong God's Gate was. The continent group of divine ruins was at least 10 times bigger than the divine wilderness mainland and was completely ruled by one force. That was God's Gate. The so-called overlords of the divine wilderness mainland were as weak as babies in front of God's Gate. The black-robed, middle-aged man, or rather the worship, was from God's Gate. "May I know why the esteemed guest from God's Gate has come to the divine wilderness?" The Baijian martial emperor flew into the sky and cupped his fists respectfully. The heavenly king token had been taken away by the God's Gate expert, and he could only choose to forget about it. "I'm here to bring opportunities to the divine wilderness mainland," the black-robed, middle-aged man said. "Bring opportunities?" Xie Sheng, the Baijian martial emperor, and the rest looked at each other in confusion. Rumble, 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 rumble. The warship sailed over, and a few figures appeared in front of the warship. There were young and old people, and all of them had powerful auras. "That's right. Opportunities. Great opportunities." The black-robed, middle-aged man's eyes lit up and he raised his voice. "A few months ago, God's Gate suddenly received news from Yuanlu. The heavenly god sect of Yuanlu wants to select young talents from the continent group of divine ruins and recruit them as disciples. The God's Gate has asked them to gather all the geniuses from the continent group of divine ruins and head to the continent group of divine ruins together. When the time comes, a messenger from the heavenly god sect will arrive to select disciples." The black-robed, middle-aged man's voice spread far and wide, and it caused a huge commotion. "What? The great sect of Yuanlu wants to select disciples from the continent group of divine ruins? Gosh! Is there such a thing? Since ancient times, the great sect of Yuanlu has rarely selected disciples from the continent group of divine ruins. Opportunities. This is great opportunities." Even the sovereigns could no longer stay calm. They were discussing excitedly. It was understandable. A heavenly king token could only allow one person to join the heavenly king hall of Yuanlu's great sect. It had already caused chaos in the central continent and caused the imperial family to fight against the heaven-guarding divine army. It could be seen how difficult and precious it was to enter the great sect of Yuanlu to cultivate. But now there was no need for a heavenly king hall of Yuanlu to recruit disciples directly. This was great opportunities. Once one was recruited as a disciple by the great sect of Yuanlu, one would have a bright future. The cultivation environment in the great sect of Yuanlu was incomparable to the divine wilderness mainland. It was countless times better. Chapter 1191. Yuanlu Great Sect is coming to the godly ruins continent to recruit disciples. Even Xiaowan's mind was shaken, extremely shocked. However, many of the sovereigns sighed. This time, it was only for the younger generation. The older ones had no hope. However, some of the younger generation's eyes were burning with passion. May I ask, when will it start? Xiexing asked. 10 days later. We'll wait here for 10 days. 10 days later, the geniuses of the godly ruins continent who want to participate will gather here. However, I have to say that Yuanlu Great Sect's recruitment criteria is very strict. Only the top geniuses can be selected. Therefore, 10 days later, I will conduct a test. Those who pass can follow me to the godly ruins continent to participate in the selection of the divine sect. The black-clothed man said, Of course. Xiexing nodded. All right, spread the news. The black-clothed man waved his hand and boarded the warship. The people on the warship also disappeared. The warship quietly floated in the air. The battle between the imperial family and the divine army naturally came to a stop. The news about the arrival of the divine gate and the recruitment of disciples by the Yuanlu Great Sect spread like wildfire across the divine wilderness continent. Lu Ming and Xiaowan also returned to the Demon God Valley. Xiaowan, Lu Ming, Chu Luo, and the others gathered in a large hall in the Demon God Valley. When Chu Luo and the others knew the purpose of the godly ruins continent, they were all shocked. Lu Ming, I think this is your chance, a great chance. Xiaowan was the first to speak. Senior Xia, you want me to participate in the selection? Lu Ming said, That's right. Your talent is rare in the godly ruins continent. There's a great chance that you'll be selected by the divine sect and become a disciple of Yuanlu Great Sect. Miss Nianqing also has a chance. Xiaowan said. Lu Ming frowned slightly and fell into deep thought. To be honest, he was also very tempted. This was a great opportunity. Now, the martial emperor realm was no longer Lu Ming's goal. His goal was to climb to a higher realm. However, once one attained the monarch realm on divine wasteland continent, it would be very difficult for one to advance any further. So, one had to leave divine wasteland continent if one wanted to continue advancing. However, when he became an emperor, he would have to leave for Yuanlu alone. Not only would the journey be long, but it would also not be easy for him to join a great sect. Now was undoubtedly a very good opportunity. However, he was still worried about Martial Monarch De. If he did not deal with Martial Monarch De, he would not be able to leave in peace and head to Yuanlu to cultivate. Lu Ming, are you worried about De? As if seeing through Lu Ming's thoughts, Xiaowan asked. That's right. If I don't get rid of this person, I won't be at ease. Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, you are too short-sighted. Think about it. Even if you are chosen by the celestial divine sect, you might not have to head to the Yuanlu to cultivate immediately. It is most likely possible for you to wait for a while before going. Even if you can't, once you're selected by the divine sect, which is a great sect in Yuanlu, there are many experts there. Any one of them can kill De. Then, you can ask an expert to kill De. Everything will be solved. Xiaowan said. His words made Lu Ming's eyes light up. That's right. If he really joined the divine sect and became their disciple, it would not be too difficult to ask the divine sect to send someone to kill De. As long as he could get rid of De, he would not have to worry about the divine region anymore. He could head to Yuanlu to cultivate in peace. All right, I will participate in the selection of the divine sect. Lu Ming thought for a while and nodded his head. Shaoqing, what about you? Lu Ming asked Xian Yanqing. I will go wherever you go, Xian Yanqing said with a smile. All right, we will depart in a few days. Lu Ming nodded his head. When the news of Yuanlu's great sect recruiting disciples spread, The divine region was in an uproar. All the overlords stopped fighting with each other. Many young geniuses started to make their way to Earth's core lake. Geniuses from Eastern Wilderness, Southern Underworld, Western Desert, and other places gathered at Earth's core lake. Soon the 10 days were almost up. Xiaowan brought Lu Ming, Xian Yanqing, Tuobashir, and other geniuses from the northern plains to Earth's core lake. The warship from the divine ruins mainland was still hovering above Earth's core lake. The warship was surrounded by people. They were all experts from various factions who had brought their respective geniuses over. Of course, there were also many who were there to watch the show. It was a gathering of experts. The crowd waited quietly. Soon the warship shone. A group of people appeared at the bow of the warship. The one leading them was the middle-aged man in black. The middle-aged man in black stepped out and flew down from the warship. Behind him were 2 young men. They were obviously from the younger generation. One of the 2 young men had a smile on his face and looked very gentle. The other had a cold and arrogant expression. He looked at the people from the divine region with a hint of disdain. Younger generation, come forward. The voice of the middle-aged man in black was heard. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. One by one, the figures flew forward and stopped in front of the middle-aged man in black. There were more than 1,000 of them. The middle-aged man in black frowned and said coldly, "Those below the spiritual god realm leave. You want to participate in the selection of Yuan Lu's sex?" Most of the young men looked helpless and could only step back. Suddenly, there were only a few dozen people left on the battlefield. Lu Ming looked around and realized that almost all the geniuses from the divine region mainland were here. Long Chen, Xian Yinjuan, Yang Patian, Liando, and the others. The underworld child from the southern sea region, the Cerberus, and the others. Other than the heartless monk and the bodhisattva from the western desert. There were 5 more young geniuses from the western desert. It was a shocking sight. Besides, Lu Ming only saw Dishin from the eastern wilderness. Obviously, other than Dishin, the others had not stepped into the spiritual god realm. Some of them looked at Lu Ming coldly. For example, Liando, Wu Chengkong, Dishin, and the others. Dishin! Lu Ming swept his gaze across the emperor god, a murderous intent flashing in his eyes. He still wanted to take him down. If there was a chance, Lu Ming would kill Dishin and collect some interest. The 2 young men behind the middle-aged man in black also sized up Lu Ming and the others. The young man with a smile still had a smile on his face. However, there was a burning flame in the eyes of the arrogant young man. He glanced at Xian Yanjuan, Xian Yanqing, Sandalwood Fairy, Jing Kongling, and the others. The flame in his eyes burned even brighter. I didn't expect there to be so many beautiful women in the divine region mainland. Hee hee. The corner of the arrogant young man's mouth curled up. His heart was burning. All right, all of you have reached the spiritual god realm. However, I still have to choose. Unless you are a top genius, ordinary geniuses will only embarrass yourselves. Now all of you stand still. I will test your bloodline. The middle-aged man in black glanced at Lu Ming and the others. Then a disc array appeared in his hand. The disc array glowed and flew into the sky. It expanded rapidly. Chapter 1192. After being enveloped by the light pillar, Lu Ming realized that golden rings had appeared on the bodies of the others. Those were chakras. Xian Yanqing had 9 golden chakras, while Lu Ming had 8 golden chakras. The black-robed, middle-aged man glanced at them and said, "All right, those with level 8 divine level bloodlines may leave. Only those with level 9 divine level bloodlines are qualified to participate in the celestial sex selection. Follow me." What? Those with level 8 divine level bloodlines are not qualified. Only those with level 9 divine level are qualified. Everyone was shocked by his words. This condition was a little too high, wasn't it? How many level 9 divine level prodigies were there in the entire divine region? A bunch of frogs in a well. Do you think level 9 divine level prodigies are great? Level 9 divine level prodigies may be the top in the small divine region. But what kind of place is the Yuan continent? The core of the Yuan realm, the celestial sect, is a major sect in the Yuan continent. The minimum requirement for recruiting disciples is level 9 divine level bloodlines. You want to join the celestial sect when you can't even meet the basic requirements. The icily arrogant young man sneered, revealing a mocking expression. His voice carried a haughty attitude. His words made many level 8 divine level prodigies pale, but they did not dare to refute him. All right, level 8 divine level prodigies, leave, the black-robed, middle-aged man said again. The prodigies were helpless. Di Shen, Wu Changkong, Jing Kongling, and the others all left. Looks like I don't have a chance. Lu Ming smiled helplessly at Xian Yinqing. It doesn't matter. If you don't go, I won't go either. Let's go. Xian Yinqing also smiled. Lu Ming nodded and flew out with Xian Yinqing. Wait. At that moment, a cold shout was heard. Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing turned around and saw the arrogant youth staring at Xian Yinqing. He did not hide the fiery light in his eyes. Lu Ming frowned and his eyes turned cold. You are a level 9 divine level prodigy. Why are you leaving? You don't want the creation anymore. The arrogant young man said to Xian Yinqing. If he can't meet the requirements, I'll go with him. If he can't go, I won't go either. Xian Yinqing looked at Lu Ming and said, Him. The arrogant young man looked at Lu Ming, his eyes filled with disdain. He's just a piece of trash at level 8 of the divine level. He doesn't even meet the requirements. What right does he have to participate? You, on the other hand, have pretty good talent. Why waste your future for a piece of trash? Come with us. These words caused Xian Yinqing's expression to turn cold. He said coldly, watch your words. Let me tell you, if he's not going, I'm not going either. Also, he's not trash. Lu Ming, let's go. Xian Yinqing pulled Lu Ming and was about to fly back. Humph! A cold snort was heard. The arrogant young man moved and appeared in front of Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing, blocking their way. He said, You've met the requirements and must go. This is not only related to your future, but also to our holy gate. Then he looked at Lu Ming and said, Kid, if you know what's good for you, get lost. A toad lusting after a swan's meat. Do you think you're worthy of this lady? Lu Ming's expression turned completely cold. That person had looked at Xian Yinqing with malicious intent from the very start, and now he was calling him trash again and again. Did he really think that he was that noble? Where did this wild dog come from? Why are you barking here? Get lost. Lu Ming's cold and disdainful voice was heard. The commotion here naturally attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's gazes were focused on this place. At this moment, Lu Ming's words shocked many people. This Lu Ming is really bold. How dare he scold a genius of the godly ruins continent? It's over. Lu Ming is in trouble. He's courting death. He's too arrogant. I think he's used to being arrogant in the godly wilderness continent. Some people sighed, some sneered and gloated. Kid, what did you say? As expected, the arrogant young man's eyes turned completely cold and murderous. He was a famous existence even in the godly ruins continent where geniuses were as common as clouds. Not many people in the godly ruins continent dared to speak to him like that. Now, there was someone in the godly wilderness continent who dared to speak to him like that and call him a wild dog. He was courting death. Looks like your ears aren't working well. Wild dog, get lost. Lu Ming scolded again. Kid, you're courting death. I'll cripple you. The arrogant young man was furious. A terrifying aura erupted from his body. His aura kept rising. 2nd level spirit god. 3rd level spirit god. 4th level spirit god. Finally, it rose to the peak of the 4th level spirit god before stopping. Peak of the 4th level spirit god. Many people were shocked and looked at the arrogant young man in shock. The arrogant young man was obviously young and belonged to the younger generation. His cultivation had already reached the 4th level spirit god. It was unbelievable. Now, the top geniuses of the godly wilderness continent, such as the underworld child and Yangpatian, were only at the peak of the 3rd level spirit god. The only one who could be sure to be at the 4th level spirit god was Longchen. But this young man was at the peak of the 4th level spirit god. Swoosh! The arrogant young man slapped his palm toward Lu Ming. His palm was covered in a layer of green light, and it smashed the space into pieces. Get lost! Lu Ming scolded and slapped out with his palm as well. Boom! The two palms collided, and the palm force swept out like a landslide. Then a figure staggered back 100 meters in the air with a pale face. It was the arrogant young man. He was repelled by Lu Ming with a single palm. The others were tongue-tied as they looked at Lu Ming in shock. After not seeing him for a while, Lu Ming had obviously become stronger. He could actually repel the arrogant young man with a single palm. Only Tuoba sure sneered. He knew how terrifying Lu Ming's battle strength was. Ah, you're courting death. I want you dead. The arrogant young man roared in anger. He was repelled with a single palm, and the one who repelled him was someone from the godly wilderness continent, someone he regarded as trash. He couldn't bear it. Boom! A green tree appeared above his head. There were 9 golden chakras on it, shining brightly. This person had awakened a 9th level divine realm bloodline. He was a giant genius. This made Yangpatian, the underworld child, and the rest look extremely solemn. This person's cultivation was at the peak of the 4th level spirit god realm, and his bloodline was also at the 9th level divine realm. His battle strength had already surpassed them. Was there really such a genius in the godly wilderness continent? Or was this person already one of the top geniuses in the godly wilderness continent? While all kinds of thoughts flashed through everyone's mind, the arrogant young man had already used bloodline fusion and turned into a green tree. The green tree was as tall as the sky and as big as a mountain. A terrifying aura bloomed, and green light shot toward Lu Ming to suppress him. So strong, really so strong. With this kind of battle strength, an ordinary 6th level spirit god would die for sure, and a 7th level spirit god would be heavily injured. Let's see how Lu Ming blocks it. The arrogant young man's strength shocked many people. Even Emperor Realm experts were moved. Chapter 1193. Shatter! Lu Ming's eyes turned cold. 8 streams of dragon force erupted from his body as he threw a punch at the greenwood. Boom! Lu Ming's fist landed heavily on the greenwood. Then, in front of everyone's shocked eyes, the greenwood exploded and turned into green energy that dissipated into the air. The figure of the arrogant youth appeared in the green light. At this moment, there was no longer any arrogance on his face. There was only disbelief, shock and disbelief. He found it hard to believe that the strongest attack he had unleashed after using bloodline fusion was defeated by Lu Ming in one move. He found it hard to believe that there was such a strong person in the divine wilderness continent. Moreover, Lu Ming's bloodline was only at the 8th level of the divine realm. Not only him, but everyone else present was also shocked. Gosh, Lu Ming's combat strength has become even more terrifying. A peak level 4 spirit god was defeated by him in one move. With such combat strength, could it be that he can compete with Longchen? Who knows? Many people were discussing. Even some of the sovereigns were shocked. Among the crowd, Longchen's expression was solemn. He stared at Lu Ming, but he quickly regained his composure and calmness. Damn it! In Lion City, Underworld Child was someone who had a grudge against Lu Ming. While he was shocked, he also secretly gritted his teeth. Lu Ming had become stronger. They wanted to take revenge and defeat Lu Ming, but their hopes were even slimmer. Behind the black-robed middle-aged man, the smile on the youth's face disappeared and was replaced by a serious expression. Interesting. The black-robed middle-aged man was also surprised. Lu Ming looked at the arrogant youth indifferently and said, "This is your strength? This is the reason you're so arrogant?" You can't even take one move from me. What a joke. You keep calling me trash. Then what are you? His voice was indifferent and full of disdain. Kid, you're dead. The arrogant youth's face turned red and he roared furiously. He stared coldly at Lu Ming, wishing he could cut Lu Ming into pieces. Whoosh! Lu Ming was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of the arrogant young man like a flickering light and passing shadow. Then he slapped out. The arrogant youth was shocked. He didn't expect Lu Ming to still dare to attack. In a hurry, he tried his best to block, but how could he block? He was sent flying by Lu Ming's slap. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming flew up and used the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps, taking 7 steps in a row. Each step was aimed at the arrogant young man's face. Bang! Bang! The 7 consecutive steps landed accurately on the arrogant young man's face, leaving a row of footprints on his face. The arrogant young man's body was like a meteorite, crashing into the Earth's core lake. With a loud boom, the body of the arrogant young man fell into the Earth's core lake, causing thousands of ripples. His entire body could no longer be seen. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Lu Ming really had guts. He couldn't have killed all the geniuses of the Godly Ruins continent, right? In the next moment, there was a fluctuation in the Earth's core lake, and the arrogant young man rushed out. At this moment, he was in an extremely sorry state. His hair was disheveled, and his body was in tatters, especially his face, which had a row of footprints on it. It was extremely clear. The corner of his mouth, the corner of his eyes, and his nostrils were constantly bleeding. It was a terrible sight to behold. Arg! Arg! Bastard! I want you dead. Men! Men! Kill him for me! Kill him! The arrogant young man screamed hysterically. Enough! A cold shout was heard. It was the black-robed, middle-aged man. The black-robed, middle-aged man spoke, causing the arrogant young man to stop. He said, Elder, this person is too audacious. Hurry up and kill him. I said that's enough. The black-robed, middle-aged man frowned, and his voice turned cold. The arrogant young man's body turned cold, and he didn't dare to say another word. He has already shown mercy. Otherwise, you would have been dead long ago. Why are you still yelling? Don't you find it embarrassing? Back off. The black-robed, middle-aged man berated. The arrogant young man's face was extremely ugly. He glared at Lu Ming coldly and backed off hatefully. What's your name? The black-robed, middle-aged man looked at Lu Ming. Lu Ming. Lu Ming replied in a tone that was neither humble nor arrogant. Lu Ming. Very well. With your cultivation and combat strength, you are qualified to participate in the Heavenly Divinity Sect's disciple selection. You can go to the Godly Ruins continent with us, the black-robed, middle-aged man said. Elder, but his bloodline is only at level 8 Divine Realm, the arrogant young man said again. Shut up. The black-robed, middle-aged man berated, causing the arrogant young man to shut up. Bloodline is very important to the major sects in Yuanlu. However, it isn't the only criterion to determine one's talent. Other aspects are also very important. The black-robed, middle-aged man said, Elder, I'm sorry. I don't want to go. Lu Ming cupped his fists at the black-robed, middle-aged man and said, These words caused everyone to be stunned. Lu Ming had the opportunity to participate in the selection of the major sects in Yuanlu. However, he didn't want to go now. Even the black-robed, middle-aged man was stunned. He found it hard to believe that someone would reject such an opportunity. Why don't you want to go? The black-robed, middle-aged man asked. Lu Ming glanced at the arrogant young man and said, If the Godly Ruins continent is filled with trash like you, then I don't want to go. Haha. The black-robed, middle-aged man smiled. He understood that Lu Ming was unhappy about it. Lu Ming, the Heavenly Divinity Sect, seems to place great importance in this selection. Once you are selected, you will be put in an important position. Our divine sect also places great importance in this selection. as long as you are selected by the Heavenly Divinity Sect. The Divine Sect will reward you handsomely. The black-robed middle-aged man looked at Lu Ming and said with a gentle smile. He was indeed stunned by Lu Ming's combat strength. It was indeed rare for a level 8 Divine Realm bloodline to have such combat strength. Besides, the black-robed middle-aged man looked at the arrogant young man and said, Mu Feng, apologize to Lu Ming. What, Elder, you want me to apologize to him? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The arrogant young man screamed. Is that so? The black-robed middle-aged man looked at Mu Feng with sharp eyes. Mu Feng's face changed drastically. He gritted his teeth and his expression changed. In the end, he gritted his teeth and stepped out. He cupped his fists at Lu Ming and said, Lu Ming, I was wrong just now. Having said that, he turned around and walked to the side. Lu Ming smiled faintly and was too lazy to be bothered by it. Lu Ming, what do you think? The black-robed, middle-aged man asked. Senior is so sincere. How can I reject it? Lu Ming said. He had rejected the black-robed, middle-aged man because he was unhappy. However, he did not want to miss such an opportunity. All right, the 12 of you will board the ship with us and head to the Divine Ruins mainland. The black-robed, middle-aged man announced. Senior, please wait for a moment. I still have something to do. 10 minutes will suffice. At this moment, Lu Ming spoke again. The black-robed middle-aged man was taken aback and said, All right, it's fine. Thank you, Senior. Lu Ming cupped his fists and turned around to look at someone. Di Shen. Swoosh. Kill. Chapter 1194. The Emperor God's expression changed drastically. He had not expected Lu Ming to attack him on such an occasion. Shocked, the Emperor God activated the space will and used the instantaneous step to retreat. However, Lu Ming's palm pierced through the space. A terrifying force rushed toward the Emperor God. Block it! The Emperor God was shocked. He roared in his heart and used all his strength to block it. At the same time, he activated the space will to the extreme. Boom! A terrifying force gushed out. The Emperor God's body flew 1,000 meters away. He spat out blood and his face was pale. Kill! Lu Ming stepped forward and continued to attack the Emperor God. Lu Ming! There was a long howl between heaven and earth. A dazzling golden light bloomed. A shocking sword chi appeared in the sky and slashed toward Lu Ming. It was De. Today, all the emperors had gathered. Naturally, he was also present. However, Lu Ming's sudden attack on the Emperor God was also beyond his expectations. At this moment, his murderous intent was piercingly cold. De, why are you interfering in the affairs of the younger generation? If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. Demonic chi soared into the sky. A vast demonic light defeated De's sword chi. Xie Wan appeared in front of De. Xielwan, get lost! De shouted and attacked Xielwan. Don't you know how to respect your seniors? Xielwan smiled faintly and fought with De. Lu Ming did not stop. He used his extreme speed and quickly approached the Emperor God. The Emperor God frantically activated the space will to escape. Seal, Lu Ming said indifferently. He used the 9 seals of the God's Gate. 2 doors of seals appeared on the left and right sides of the Emperor God. They emitted a dazzling light and suppressed the Emperor God. The Emperor God suddenly felt that the space around him was like a swamp, making it difficult for him to move. Space chaos. The Emperor God's eyes turned red. He roared crazily and used a self-harming method to escape from behind. However, he was in despair. At this moment, another door of seals appeared behind him and enveloped him. 3 sealing gates. After this period of cultivation, Lu Ming of Divine Gate 9 seals had also made a breakthrough, allowing him to condense 3 sealing gates. No! Di Shin screamed in horror. He could not escape. Lu Ming slowly walked up and punched the dantian of the monarch god. A terrifying power surged into the monarch god's dantian and penetrated it, causing the monarch god to vomit blood. Stop! Di Shen's angry voice came from above. Stop! Haha! Di, why didn't you stop when you went to kill me? Lu Ming laughed and swung his hand down like a blade, cutting the monarch god's head into two halves. Di Shen, who stood at the top of the younger generation in the eastern wilderness and ranked first on the list of top 1,000 talents, was dead. Boom! In the sky, there was a huge explosion. Di and Xiaowan had exchanged a blow. The two of them retreated far away and did not continue fighting. Di's gaze was very cold as he looked at Lu Ming. His murderous intent was so thick that it could not dissipate. Lu Ming sneered and looked at Di. Didn't Di rely on his high cultivation to take him down and rob him of the 9 dragons' bloodline? Then he would kill his strongest descendant now and collect some interest. Haha, Lu Ming, good job killing him. That's how a man should be. Take revenge. Xiao Wan laughed, making the imperial Xie family members' faces turn ugly. Di, I'll kill Di Shen today. I'll kill you in the future. Lu Ming said. His voice spread out like a storm. The people of the divine region were shocked. Just now, Xiao Wan and Di had fought for a short time. The combat strength displayed was amazing, far exceeding that of an ordinary emperor. However, Lu Ming's courage was even more amazing. He said that he would kill Di in the future. Di was so powerful. How could Lu Ming be so confident? I'll be waiting, Di said coldly. He glanced at Xiao Wan and the people of the divine region. Then he turned around and disappeared with a step. Interesting, the middle-aged man in black whispered. He was even more interested. Senior, I'm done with my business. Lu Ming came to the middle-aged man in black and cupped his fists. The middle-aged man in black nodded. Senior, I have a question. At that moment, a voice was heard. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Long Qin. What's the matter? Ask away. The middle-aged man in black said, Senior, if I'm selected by the Yuanlu sect and recruited as a disciple, do I have to go to Yuanlu immediately? If I want to return to the divine region to settle some personal matters, I need some time. Do you allow me to do so? Long Qin asked. The others had the same expression, including Lu Ming. That was the question he wanted to ask. Ha ha ha, you're dreaming. Who do you think you are? The Yuanlu sect will select you? I'm just giving you a chance to go. However, the chances are slim. Don't overestimate yourself. Before the middle-aged man in black could answer, Mu Feng sneered and looked at Long Qin disdainfully. Long Qin glanced at Mu Feng indifferently. Then he ignored him and continued to look at the middle-aged man in black. The middle-aged man in black frowned. Apparently, he did not like Mu Feng's temper. He glanced at Mu Feng coldly, and Mu Feng's expression changed again. He shut his mouth obediently. The Yuanlu sect is naturally reasonable. They will definitely allow you to do so. After all, you have to settle your personal matters before going to Yuanlu. Then you can focus on your cultivation. The middle-aged man in black said and gave a definite answer. Lu Ming secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Even if he was selected by the Yuanlu sect, he would have to return to settle some matters. First of all, he would not be at ease if he did not settle Di. In addition, his second body was still cultivating in the sacred mansion, Secret Land. When he went to Yuanlu in the future, he would have to bring his second body along. Do you have any other questions? Ask all at once, so that you won't have any doubts. The middle-aged man in black said. Everyone shook their heads to show that they did not have any more questions. All right, since you don't have any more questions, get on the ship. The middle-aged man in black said. Then he turned around and flew onto the warship. Lu Ming and the rest of the 12 people also flew onto the warship. The warship was huge and extremely wide. The deck was a few thousand meters long and wide. Behind the deck, there was a large door. Inside the door were some houses. Mu Feng glanced coldly at Lu Ming and the rest, especially at Xian Yinjuan and Xian Yinqing. He snorted coldly and took the lead to walk into the door. Brother Lu, I'm Yi Chuan." At that moment, a young man came before Lu Ming and cupped his fists. Lu Ming recognized him. He was one of the two young men behind the middle-aged man in black. He had a smile on his face and looked very gentle. "Brother Yi, what's the matter?" Lu Ming asked. "Haha, it's nothing serious. I admire Brother Lu's combat strength, so I want to make friends with you." Yi Chuan said with a smile, "Brother Yi, you're too polite. How can my insignificant skills be compared with the supreme talents of the Divine Ruins continent?" Lu Ming said politely. Chapter 1195. "Oh, thank you for your reminder, Brother Yi." Lu Ming clasped his fists. "Haha, you're welcome. Brother Lu and Miss, this way please. This ship is not small. There's something else inside. Let me show you around." Yi Chuan said with a smile. Since Yi Chuan was so enthusiastic, Lu Ming could not refuse. He and Xie Nianqing followed Yi Chuan through the door. Of course, Tuoba sure had been following behind Lu Ming. Now that the 100-Beast tribe had surrendered to Lu Ming and Tuoba sure had been defeated by Lu Ming in one move, he admired Lu Ming very much. Thus, he became Lu Ming's subordinate and stayed by Lu Ming's side. The warship was really big. It had everything, including living rooms, cultivation rooms, alchemy rooms, and weapon forging rooms. There was even a restaurant where they could order food and drinks. However, they had to pay with origin stones. Yi Chuan brought Lu Ming and the others around, which was an eye-opener for Lu Ming and the others. In the end, Lu Ming and the others randomly chose a room to stay in. Although the speed of the ship was extremely fast, the distance between the Divine Wilderness continent and the Divine Ruins continent was too far. Even with the ship, it would take a month to fly. Therefore, they would have to spend the time on the ship. Rumble. The hull of the ship shook slightly. The ship started and flew towards the north at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared above the Earth's core lake. After the ship started flying, it completely stabilized as if it was on flat ground. Lu Ming walked into the room and closed his eyes to rest. Half a day later, Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing went to the restaurant to eat. When they arrived at the restaurant, they saw a few familiar faces. Lion Capital and Kong Lin were sitting at a table. When they saw Lu Ming, their eyes flashed with deep fear. Previously, Lu Ming had defeated Mu Feng in one move. His combat strength had shocked them. In addition, Lu Ming also saw Long Qin sitting alone at a table, slowly drinking wine. At another table, Lu Ming saw two bald heads. It was Moonless and Monk Wuliang. At this moment, Moonless was slowly sipping his tea while Monk Wuliang picked up a large piece of demonic beast meat and chewed on it. His mouth was filled with oil. Seeing Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing, Monk Wuliang called out, "Almsgiver Lu, Miss Xie, come this way please, my treat." "Grandmaster, please go ahead. I won't disturb you any further." Lu Ming smiled and walked to the side with Xian Yinqing. On the other side of the table, a beautiful woman in white sat alone. She was Xie Nianjuan. Seeing Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing, Xian Yinjuan's cold eyes landed on Xian Yinqing. He coldly said, "When we return to the Divine Wilderness continent, I will personally capture you and suppress you in the 9 underworlds." Don't worry. There's no need to return to the Divine Wilderness. In the Divine Ruins, I will trample you under my feet." Xian Yinqing spoke tit for tat. With that, she pulled Lu Ming and walked to a table at the side, ignoring Xian Yinjuan. At the entrance of a passage, Mu Feng saw the scene. So these two beautiful women who look almost the same are not in the same group. It seems like they have a grudge. Hee. Then I'll take down the white-clothed woman first. As for Lu Ming and the black-clothed woman, when we return to the Divine Ruins continent, Mu Feng coldly snorted. Xian Yinqing and Xian Yinjuan. This pair of sisters were peerless beauties. However, their temperaments were different. It really moved Mu Feng's heart and made his heart burn. Originally, when he saw Xian Yinqing and Lu Ming walking so close, he thought that Xian Yinjuan was also in the same group as Lu Ming. He was afraid of Lu Ming and did not dare to make a move. However, now that he saw that Xian Yinjuan and Lu Ming were not in the same group, his heart immediately became active. Revealing a smile that he thought was charming, Mu Feng walked towards Xian Yinjuan. He came to Xian Yinjuan's table and said, "Miss, may I sit here?" Xian Yinjuan coldly glanced at Mu Feng, but did not say anything. Mu Feng's eyes narrowed slightly as he sat down and said, "My name is Mu Feng. I believe that Miss should have heard of me before. There are many things that Miss needs to pay attention to when you go to the Divine Ruins continent. This is because the Divine Ruins is not like the Divine Wilderness. The Divine Wilderness is a small place, but there are many experts and geniuses in the Divine Ruins." Mu Feng's tone revealed a trace of arrogance. It was as if he was saying, "You people from a small place have to pay more attention when you go to a big place. But it doesn't matter, I can give you some advice." In Mu Feng's heart, the fact that he could tell Xian Yinjuan these things already showed that he was taking care of her. Scram! A cold voice came out of Xian Yinjuan's mouth and spread throughout the restaurant. Mu Feng's words came to an abrupt end. Then a cold light burst out from his eyes as he said, "Miss, what are you talking about?" "Scram, can't you hear me?" Xian Yinjuan said coldly. There was a trace of disgust in her eyes as she looked at Mu Feng. "How dare you, you bitch! I kindly reminded you, but you don't know how to appreciate my kindness. You dare to insult me. Now kneel down and apologize." Mu Feng's face was incomparably gloomy as he coldly berated. His heart was filled with anger. In the beginning, it was Lu Ming who dared to injure him. His stomach was filled with anger. Now, even a Xian Yinjuan dared to berate him. Who did she think he was? Xian Yinjuan glanced at Mu Feng with disdain, then stood up and turned to leave. Since Mu Feng shamelessly refused to leave, she could only leave. "Bitch, if you want to leave, kneel down and admit your mistake. Be my servant for 3 years." Mu Feng coldly shouted as he sent a palm strike towards Xian Yinjuan. Xian Yinjuan turned around and sent out a palm strike. Bang! When the two palms collided, Xian Yinjuan's body trembled and she took 5 steps back. However, Mu Feng also took 3 steps back. 4th level spirit god. You have some ability. However, you just broke through to the 4th level spirit god. It's still too early for you to fight me. Mu Feng's face changed at first. Clearly, he didn't expect that an expert like Lu Ming would appear in a mere divine wilderness continent. Now, this woman's cultivation was actually so profound, reaching the 4th level spirit god. But immediately, Mu Feng's face turned colder, and the fiery light in his eyes blazed even more. Whoosh! Whoosh! Mu Feng's palm strike continuously enveloped Xian Yinjuan. Whoosh! At this moment, a wine cup broke through the void and flew towards Mu Feng's face. The wine cup carried a terrifying gale that disrupted Mu Feng's palm strike. "Who is it? You're courting death." Mu Feng smashed the wine cup with a palm strike. His cold gaze swept across the scene and finally landed on Long Chen. The wine cup had just flown out from Long Chen's hand. "Kid, it's you." Mu Feng stared coldly at Long Chen. "Let her go." Long Chen said calmly, "Haha, kid, who do you think you are? You're overestimating yourself. I'll cripple you right now and see what you're capable of." Mu Feng coldly shouted. Rage soared in his heart. These trash from the divine wilderness continent actually didn't put him in their eyes. They were simply hateful and deserved to die. Did they really think he was a pushover? First it was Lu Ming, then it was Xian Yinjuan, and now it was Long Chen. Chapter 1196. With his talent, although he was also a genius in the Divine Ruins continent, he was not considered the top. His status was very awkward, so he applied to come to the Divine Wilderness continent. He originally thought that he could be awe-inspiring in the Divine Wilderness continent and suppress all the so-called geniuses under his feet. In his imagination, wouldn't the country bumpkins of the Divine Wilderness continent try to curry favor with him? Some of them would even throw themselves at him. However, the reality was far from what he had imagined. In the beginning, he was beaten up badly by Lu Ming. However, the elder seemed to value Lu Ming's talent and asked him to apologize. Now, Xian Yinjuan and Long Chen were the same. He wanted to make a move. He wanted to cripple Long Chen as an example so that the others in the divine wilderness continent would be afraid of him and Xian Yinjuan would obediently throw herself at him. He strode towards Long Chen. On the side, Lu Ming, Xian Yinqing, and scrupulous monk Lion Do and the others watched with interest. Long Chen was now engaged to Xian Yinlin, and Xian Yinjuan was Xia Yinlin's sister. If Xian Yinjuan was in trouble, Long Chen would naturally not sit idly by. They were curious that Mu Feng wanted to fight Long Chen. They did not know if Mu Feng could test Long Chen's strength. Swoosh! Mu Feng was very direct. He directly attacked Long Chen with his palm. The wind from his palm whistled, and the energy surged in the restaurant. Nonetheless, this was the interior of the cross-sea spaceship. The entire spaceship was made of an extremely hard metal, and its entire body was engraved with inscriptions. Even a ruler would not be able to easily destroy it, so it could naturally block the force. Get lost! Long Chen sat still and slapped out with his palm. Bang! When the palms collided, Mu Feng's body was pushed back 7 or 8 steps. As for Long Chen, he was still sitting there, motionless. Damn it! Mu Feng roared, his face flushed red. The aura on his body became more violent, and the bloodline on his head appeared. He shouted and attacked Long Chen again. Apart from the fact that he didn't use bloodline fusion, this was his strongest move. He did not believe it. He did not believe that the people of the divine wilderness continent were so strong. Long Chen stood up. One of his arms suddenly became thicker. It was twice as thick as usual. He threw a punch. This punch smashed through all of Mu Feng's attacks and landed on Mu Feng's palm. Kacha! Mu Feng's palm was completely deformed. He screamed as his body flew far away like a kite with its string cut. He slammed heavily into the wall and coughed up blood. At the side, monk Wuliang Sherdou and the others narrowed their eyes and looked at Long Chen with solemn eyes. Long Chen's combat strength has become stronger again. Lu Ming's heart stirred. It was the same move that Zhang Xian had used to defeat Tuoba Sherbak in the Holy City, and now he had defeated Mu Feng with a single move. Other than the people from the divine wilderness continent, the people from the divine ruins continent were even more shocked. Looks like the divine wilderness continent has produced a few outstanding geniuses. Some people from the godly ruins continent sighed. Scram! Long Chen's gaze landed on Mu Feng. Mu Feng struggled to get up. His eyes were about to spit fire. He was aggrieved. He originally thought that he could show off in the divine wilderness continent, but he did not expect to be beaten up again and again. You guys wait for me. Mu Feng left behind a ruthless sentence and retreated dejectedly. Long Chen continued to sit down and drink. The scene returned to calm. Lu Ming, if you go against Long Chen, are you confident? Xia Nianqing transmitted his voice to Lu Ming. I don't know. Lu Ming shook his head and said, I know too little about Long Chen. I don't know what his bloodline is. I don't even know his specific cultivation. It's difficult to measure it. Looks like you have an opponent, Xia Nianqing said with a smile. Don't worry. In the future, I will suppress all my enemies. The man you like will be invincible, Lu Ming said with a smile. He was full of confidence. How could he be so confident when his 9 dragons bloodline and the prison-suppressing steel bloodline both reached level 9 of the divine realm? His combat strength would increase greatly. He would be invincible against those of the same level. Shameless. Xian Yinqing blushed slightly and rolled his eyes at Lu Ming. However, his eyes were filled with a happy smile. After eating and drinking for a while, Lu Ming and Xian Yinqing paid the bill and left. After walking around the ship for a while, they came to the deck. Outside, the wind was howling. With the speed of the cross-sea ship, the wind formed by breaking through space was terrifyingly powerful. As long as anyone below the spirit god realm came to the deck, they would be crushed into pieces by the storm. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing emitted their true essence to block the storm. They looked around. What entered their eyes was an endless ocean. On the ocean, the wind howled. Under the ocean, the waves were thousands of layers and tens of thousands of meters high. The scene was spectacular. Lu Ming and Xian Yanqing held hands and looked at this spectacular scene together. A month's time was very short for cultivators. It passed in the blink of an eye. A month later, they arrived at the Godly Ruins continent and entered the territory of the Godly Ruins continent. The geniuses of the Godly Wilderness continent gathered on the deck and looked at the magnificent mountains and rivers below. What rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth! The spiritual chi is mixed with rich origin chi. Tuoba Ashur took a deep breath and looked intoxicated. Not bad. This cultivation environment is much better than the Godly Wilderness continent. Even if an emperor cultivates here, it would be easier for him to break through. The conditions are much better than the Godly Wilderness continent. Lu Ming sensed carefully. The Godly Ruins continent not only had rich spiritual chi and origin chi, but it also seemed to be easier to comprehend the concept of heaven and earth. Cultivating in such an environment would naturally be faster and there would be more experts. It's said that the Godly Ruins continent is still worlds apart from the Yuanlu. I wonder what the cultivation environment of the Yuanlu is like. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with anticipation. The warship flew quickly in the air and endless mountains and rivers passed by below. After another 2 days, a vast ancient city appeared in front of them. Everyone, that ancient city is where the South God Palace of the God sect is located. You will be staying in the South God Palace for the next 3 months, the black-robed, middle-aged man said. For the Celestial God sect's selection of disciples, I will briefly explain the process and the situation of the Godly Ruins continent. The God sect reigns supreme in the Godly Ruins continent. The God sect is divided into the North, South, East, and West God palaces. However, the 4 great God palaces each govern a region and have been governed separately for countless years. Therefore, although the 4 great God palaces belong to the God sect, they can be considered as 4 forces. They compete with each other and even fight. The Godly Ruins continent has a total of 42 continents called the Godly Ruins Continent Group. The 4 great God palaces are in charge of one direction. The Godly Wilderness continent is in the south of the Godly Ruins continent and belongs to the South God Palace. There are a total of 9 continents. When the geniuses of the 9 continents gather, we will head to the ancient city of the Godly Ruins in 3 months.